Imagine waking up one morning to discover the stranger you spent just one night with has not only vanished but reappeared months later, with not one, but 6 children, your children. And tangled up in it all, a dangerous secret that powerful enemies would kill to keep buried. Tonight, we're diving into a story of love, betrayal, and redemption. A story where one night changes everything, turning passion into parenthood and hidden secrets into battles for survival. But before we begin, let me welcome all of you, especially our new viewers, and to my returning family here on the channel. Thank you for always showing up with so much love and support. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, and if you don't want to miss a single twist or heart-stopping moment, please take a second right now to subscribe to the channel and tap that notification bell. It's the best way to support us, and it makes sure you never miss the next story. Now, get comfortable, because this isn't just another love story. This is the tale of a vanished woman, 6 miracle children, and a wealthy CEO who will discover that sometimes the greatest fortune is not money, but family. Let's begin where all great love stories do, with 2 strangers who have no idea their lives are about to collide in the most extraordinary way. San Francisco glowed with promise that evening as Zara Ashford stepped out of the Uber onto the cobblestone entrance of the Fairmont Hotel. The evening fog rolled gently across the city's skyline, softening the sharp edges of skyscrapers against the darkening sky. Wrapped in a simple black dress that hugged her curves just enough to be noticed but not scrutinized, Zara paused for a moment, smoothing imaginary wrinkles from her outfit. This wasn't her usual scene. As a research scientist at Clover Gene Laboratories, Zara typically spent her evenings hunched over microscopes or buried in data analysis, not mingling with San Francisco's elite. Yet here she stood, an embossed invitation clutched between nervous fingers, about to enter one of the most prestigious charity events of the season. "You're sure this is where you want to be dropped off, miss?" the driver asked, noticing her hesitation. Zara nodded, forcing confidence into her smile. "Absolutely. Thank you." As the car pulled away, she took a deep breath. 6 months of isolation after her painful breakup with David had been enough. Tonight marked her first real attempt to rejoin the world, to remember what it felt like to exist beyond the walls of her apartment and laboratory. The grand entrance of the Fairmont loomed before her, its gold-framed doors held open by attendants in crisp uniforms. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors and velvet furnishings. The charity gala, benefiting genetic research for rare childhood diseases, filled the hotel's grand ballroom with a symphony of elegant laughter, clinking glasses, and the gentle swell of a string quartet playing in the corner. Zara accepted a flute of champagne from a passing server, using the moment to survey the room. Executives in tailored suits chatted with women draped in designer gowns and family heirlooms. Tech moguls, venture capitalists, and biotech pioneers, all gathered under one roof, their combined net worth likely exceeding the GDP of a small nation. She sipped her champagne slowly, savoring the crisp bubbles. This night wasn't about finding someone new. It was about reclaiming herself, about proving she could exist in spaces that once intimidated her. After devoting years to genetic research that often went unnoticed, attending an event that celebrated that very field felt like a small rebellion against her self-imposed isolation. "Dr. Warren mentioned you might attend tonight," a voice said beside her. Zara turned to find Jessica Chen, a colleague from a partner lab, smiling warmly. "It's good to see you outside those white walls for once." Zara returned the smile, grateful for a familiar face. "Apparently there's a whole world beyond the lab." "Who knew?" Jessica laughed, linking her arm through Zara's. "Come on, let me introduce you to some people who might actually understand what we do for a living." For the next hour, Zara floated through conversations about gene sequencing advancements and CRISPR applications, finding comfort in the familiar territory of scientific discussion. Yet throughout these exchanges, she felt oddly distracted, as if waiting for something or someone to appear. That's when she saw him. Roman Bartlett stood across the room, commanding attention without effort. The CEO of Bartlett Innovations was known throughout Silicon Valley for his revolutionary biotech patents and ruthless business acumen. His tall frame was draped in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that highlighted broad shoulders and a confident stance. Dark hair, slightly longer than corporate standard, framed features. That belonged on a Renaissance sculpture rather than in a boardroom. "That's Roman Bartlett," Jessica whispered, following Zara's gaze. "They say he works 20 hours a day and expects everyone else to do the same. Brilliant mind, though. His company just secured FDA approval for that synthetic tissue regeneration technology everyone's been talking about." Zara nodded absently, more interested in the way Roman listened intently to whoever was speaking to him. Unlike other executives who scanned rooms for more important connections, his focus remained completely on his conversation partner. There was something refreshingly genuine about it. "Has he always been in biotech?" Zara asked, trying to sound casual. Jessica shrugged. "Started in software, made his first millions before 30, then pivoted to medical technology after his mother died of a rare genetic disorder. The rumors say he's impossible to work with, perfectionist, demanding, completely married to his vision. And his personal life?" The question slipped out before Zara could stop it. Jessica's eyebrows rose with amusement. "Interested, are we?" She laughed softly. "The tabloids occasionally link him with models or actresses, but nothing ever sticks. Most people think he has no time for relationships, too busy changing the world." Zara was about to respond when Roman suddenly looked up, his gaze sweeping across the room until it collided with hers. The connection was immediate and electric, catching her completely off guard. His eyes, a striking blue-green that somehow registered even from across the crowded ballroom, held hers for 1 second, then 2, then 3. She should have looked away. Social etiquette demanded it. Instead, something defiant within her maintained the connection, challenging him from afar. A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, and Zara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I think I need some air," she murmured to Jessica, breaking the spell. "I'll be back in a moment." Making her way through the crowd, Zara slipped onto one of the balconies overlooking the city. San Francisco stretched before her, a constellation of lights climbing up and down its famous hills. The cool night air soothed her flushed skin as she leaned against the stone railing. What was that? She wasn't the type to be captivated by wealthy men in expensive suits. Her scientist brain preferred substance over style, depth over charisma. Yet something about Roman Bartlett had pierced through her carefully constructed barriers. "The view from here makes you forget how complicated the world is, doesn't it?" The deep voice startled her. Turning, she found herself face to face with Roman Bartlett himself, standing closer than she expected. Up close, his presence was even more magnetic, confident without arrogance, powerful without intimidation. "I was thinking the opposite, actually," Zara replied, surprised by her own boldness. "All those lights represent people with their own complex lives and struggles. It's a reminder of how intricate everything really is." Roman's expression shifted from polite interest to genuine curiosity, an unusual perspective. Most people see distance as simplification. "I'm not most people," Zara said, immediately regretting how cliché it sounded. But Roman didn't seem to mind. Instead, he extended his hand. "Roman Bartlett." "Zara Ashford," she replied, accepting his handshake. His palm was warm against hers, the contact sending an unexpected current through her arm. "You work in genetics?" he asked. Zara raised an eyebrow. "How did you know?" "The way you were discussing CRISPR modifications with Dr. Chen earlier. Few people speak about genetic sequencing with such passion." His gaze was direct, attentive in a way that made her feel like the only person in his world at that moment. "I'm a research scientist at Clover Gene," she admitted. "We're working on gene therapy applications for degenerative diseases." "Under Carl Braun," Roman nodded. "He's giving a presentation later tonight." Brilliant mind, though his methods are sometimes unconventional. Something in his tone made Zara curious. "You know Carl? Our paths have crossed at various conferences. His reputation precedes him." Roman leaned against the railing beside her, close enough that she could detect the subtle scent of his cologne, cedar, and something distinctly masculine. "What brought you to genetic research?" The question was simple, yet Zara felt its weight. Most people at these events exchanged superficial pleasantries, not genuine inquiries about passion and purpose. "My brother had cystic fibrosis," she said quietly. "I watched him struggle to breathe every day until he died at 17. I decided then that I would dedicate my life to understanding the genetic code that betrayed him." Roman was silent for a moment, his expression softening. "I'm sorry about your brother. It was 15 years ago," Zara said, though the pain never truly disappeared. "My mother had Huntington's," Roman offered unexpectedly. "That's why I shifted Bartlett Innovations toward medical technology. Some losses change your entire trajectory." Their eyes met again, this time with a shared understanding that transcended the usual gala small talk. In that moment, Zara felt seen in a way she hadn't experienced in years, perhaps ever. "Would you like to walk with me?" Roman asked, gesturing toward the garden terrace below. "These events can be overwhelming, and the gardens here are remarkable." Zara hesitated. She had come tonight to rejoin the world, not to fall into conversation with one of Silicon Valley's most eligible bachelors. Yet something about Roman's straightforward manner and the unexpected vulnerability he had shown compelled her to nod. "I'd like that," she said. As they descended the marble staircase to the garden, Zara felt the weight of curious eyes following them. Roman Bartlett rarely gave anyone his undivided attention, yet here he was, choosing to spend his evening with an unknown scientist from a competing company. The garden paths were lit by soft lanterns that created pools of golden light among the meticulously trimmed hedges and blooming flowers. Walking beside Roman, Zara felt a strange combination of comfort and exhilaration, as if she had found something she didn't know she was searching for. "Tell me about your work," Roman said as they wandered past a small fountain. "Not the press release version, the real reason you go to the lab every morning." The question caught her off guard with its precision. "I believe we're on the verge of something revolutionary," she admitted. "Gene therapy that could rewrite the story for children like my brother." But lately, she trailed off, unsure whether to share her recent concerns about Clover Jean's direction. "Lately?" Roman prompted gently. Zara shook her head. "It's nothing, just the usual research frustrations." Roman stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "I've been in this industry long enough to recognize when someone is holding back because of loyalty or caution. Whatever it is, your secret is safe with me." His gaze held such sincerity that Zara almost told him everything. Her growing unease about Carl's secretive side projects, the unexplained lab access at odd hours, the samples that disappeared from storage. But professional discretion won out. "Another time, perhaps," she said with a small smile. "Tonight isn't for work concerns." Roman nodded, accepting her boundary without pressing further. "What is tonight for then, Zara Ashford?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibility. The string quartet's music drifted down from the ballroom above, filling the silence with gentle melody. "Tonight," Zara said, surprising herself with her honesty, "is for remembering what it feels like to be alive." Something shifted in Roman's expression, a flash of recognition, as if her words had touched something deep within him. He stepped closer, the space between them charged with unspoken possibility. "May I have this dance, then?" he asked, extending his hand once more. And as Zara placed her palm in his, she knew with absolute certainty that this night would change everything. The garden path curved through sculpted hedges, guiding Roman and Zara to a secluded alcove where the sounds of the gala faded into the background. A stone bench, nestled beneath a trellis of climbing roses, offered them refuge from the social pageantry above. The night air carried the faint scent of salt from the bay, mingling with the fragrance of the garden. Roman gestured to the bench. "Shall we?" As they sat, Zara noticed how he maintained a respectful distance, close enough for intimacy but not presuming. His posture changed slightly, shoulders relaxing as if he too had shed some invisible weight upon leaving the crowded ballroom. "You mentioned Clover Jean," Roman said, his voice taking on a more genuine tone than the polished cadence he'd used with other guests. What drew you to Karl Braun's team specifically? His reputation is complex. Zara considered her words carefully. The resources, initially. His lab has equipment most genetic researchers only dream about. But lately, I've been questioning whether our priorities align. How so? Roman's interest seemed genuine, not merely conversational. Science should serve humanity, not the other way around, she said, surprised by her own candor. Sometimes I worry that Karl forgets that distinction. Roman nodded slowly. The line between visionary and obsessive is often blurred in our field. The most brilliant minds sometimes need reminding of the human element. Is that why your company insists on those ethics panels that drive your competitors crazy? Zara asked with a small smile. Roman laughed, the sound warm and unexpected. You've done your homework on Bartlett Innovations. Professional curiosity, she admitted. Your neural interface patents crossed my desk last month. The application possibilities for genetic disorders are fascinating. Those applications were precisely why I pushed the research forward, Roman said, his eyes brightening with passion. Imagine helping a child with muscular dystrophy control an exoskeleton through thought alone, or mapping neural responses to gene therapy in real time, Zara added, leaning forward slightly. Exactly. Roman's enthusiasm matched her own. The intersection of genetics and neural technology is where the next breakthrough will happen. Their conversation flowed effortlessly from professional interests to personal philosophies. Roman described growing up in Boston with parents who valued intellectual curiosity above all else, while Zara shared stories of her childhood in Seattle, where her brother's illness had shaped her family's entire existence. After Ryan died, she confessed, "My parents never really recovered. They expected me to pursue medicine, become a doctor who could save people like him. They were disappointed when I chose research instead. They didn't understand that you might help thousands like him rather than dozens," Roman observed. Zara looked at him with surprise. No one's ever framed it quite that way before. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the distant notes of the string quartet starting a new melody. The music drifted down to their garden sanctuary, a waltz with a hauntingly beautiful refrain. Roman stood and offered his hand. "Would you humor me? This song deserves better than to be merely overheard." Zara hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. "I should warn you, I haven't danced properly in years. Fortunately, it's like riding a bicycle," Roman said, as he guided her to a flat section of the garden path. "Your body remembers." His hand settled at the small of her back, warm and steady. As they began to move, Zara was struck by how effortlessly they found their rhythm together. Roman led with confidence, but without dominance, responding to her movements as if they'd danced together countless times before. "Where did you learn to dance like this?" she asked as he guided her through a turn. "My mother insisted," he replied, his expression softening at the memory. "She believed every education should include art, music, and dance. Said it taught us to find harmony in movement before we tried to find it in life." "She sounds remarkable." "She was," he said simply, the past tense hanging between them. As they moved across the stone path, the city lights twinkled beyond the garden wall like earthbound stars. The music seemed to swell around them, creating a private world where only they existed. "What about you?" Roman asked. "What shaped Zara Ashford beyond the tragedy of losing your brother?" The question was asked with such genuine interest that Zara found herself sharing things she rarely revealed: her year backpacking through South America after college, her failed startup attempt before joining Clover Gene, her dream of someday establishing a research foundation focused exclusively on orphan diseases. "No one would fund it," she explained as they continued their dance. "Not enough profit potential in treating conditions that affect only a few thousand people worldwide." Roman's eyes held hers. "Some things are worth pursuing despite the balance sheet. Says the billionaire," she teased gently. "Says the man who spent 3 years developing a therapy that helps exactly 800 patients worldwide," he countered, spinning her in a graceful turn. As the song drew to a close, Their steps slowed. Roman's hand remained at her waist, and Zara made no move to step away. The garden around them had emptied of other guests, leaving them alone, beneath a canopy of stars that had emerged from behind thin clouds. "Why did you really come to the gala tonight, Zara?" Roman asked, his voice low and intimate. She considered deflecting with humor, but found herself unwilling to break the honesty between them. "I've been hiding," she admitted. "After my last relationship ended badly, I retreated into work. Tonight was about stepping back into the world. And have you?" His question held more meaning than its simple words suggested. "I think I've stepped into something entirely new," she answered. Their faces were close now, the space between them charged with possibility. Roman's gaze dropped briefly to her lips before meeting her eyes again, seeking permission. Zara closed the distance between them, her heart racing as their lips met. The kiss was gentle at first, a tentative exploration that quickly deepened as Roman's arms encircled her completely. His touch ignited something within her that had been dormant for too long, a hunger for connection that transcended the physical. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, the world around them seemed altered somehow. Colors more vivid, sounds more distinct, the night air electric against their skin. "I should probably return to the gala," Zara said, though she made no move to leave his embrace. "People might notice we're missing." "Let them notice," Roman replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face with unexpected tenderness. "Though if you'd prefer, there's a private exit through the eastern garden. My car is waiting there." The implication was clear, yet his tone remained respectful, an invitation, not a presumption. Zara searched his face, looking for any sign of the calculating businessman she'd heard about in industry whispers. Instead, she found only genuine connection, a rare transparency that matched her own unexpected openness tonight. "Where would we go?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have a place overlooking the bay," he said. "Or anywhere you'd like. The night is ours to decide." The choice hung between them: return to the familiar rhythm of her cautious life, or embrace this unexpected deviation. In Roman's eyes, Zara saw possibility, not just for physical intimacy, but for the kind of connection she had stopped believing existed. "Show me the bay," she said finally, surprising herself with her certainty. Roman's smile reached his eyes, crinkling the corners in a way that transformed his features from merely handsome to utterly captivating. He offered his arm, and she took it, feeling as though she were stepping across some invisible threshold. They walked in comfortable silence through the eastern garden where stone pathways wound between Japanese maples and trickling fountains. At the gate, a sleek black car waited, its driver standing at attention. "Mr. Bartlett," the driver nodded, opening the door for them. As they settled into the leather seats, Zara felt a moment of surreal clarity. 24 hours ago, she had been alone in her apartment, reviewing research data and eating takeout. Now, she was leaving a charity gala with Roman Bartlett, heading toward his home and whatever the night might bring. The car pulled away from the Fairmont, gliding through the San Francisco streets toward the water. Roman's hand found hers in the darkness of the back seat, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her skin. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, noticing her contemplative silence. Zara turned to him, the passing streetlights illuminating his face in rhythmic flashes. "No," she said with quiet certainty. "I'm having no thoughts at all, and that's exactly what I need tonight." Roman brought her hand to his lips, placing a gentle kiss on her knuckles. "Then let's agree, no past, no future. Just this moment, just tonight." As the car climbed the hills toward Roman's home, Zara felt something shift within her, a wall crumbling, a door opening. Whatever awaited them, she knew with absolute certainty that this night would leave its mark on her forever. Neither could have imagined just how profound that mark would be. Golden morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Roman's Pacific Heights penthouse, casting long rays across the rumpled sheets where Zara had lain just hours before. Roman stirred, his arm instinctively reaching across the empty space beside him, finding nothing but cool cotton where warmth should have been. His eyes opened fully, clarity rushing in with the sunlight. The bed was empty. The bathroom door stood open, revealing darkness within. The silence in the apartment felt absolute, punctuated only by the faint ticking of the antique clock in the hallway. "Zara?" he called, his voice rough with sleep. No answer came. Roman sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair as his gaze swept the room for any sign of her. Her dress was gone from where it had been draped over his bedroom chair. Her shoes no longer stood by the door. It was as if the night before, their connection, their shared vulnerability, their passion, had been nothing but a dream. But Roman knew better. The scent of her perfume lingered on his pillowcase, a subtle reminder of reality. Memories flooded back, her laughter as they'd shared whiskey on his terrace overlooking the bay, the way she'd challenged his views. On privatized medical research, how her eyes had sparkled when he showed her his collection of rare first-edition science texts. And, later, the feel of her skin against his, the whispered confessions in the darkness, the connection that had felt so startlingly different from anything he'd experienced before. Why had she left without saying goodbye? Roman rose from the bed, pulled on a pair of sweatpants, and moved through his apartment with growing unease. In the kitchen, he found no note on the counter. By the front door, no hastily scribbled explanation. His phone revealed no messages or missed calls. He pressed the intercom button for his building's security desk. "James, good morning. Did you see a woman leave my apartment early this morning?" "Yes, sir, Mr. Bartlett," came the prompt reply. "Around 5:30 a.m. She declined my offer to call a car for her. Did she say anything? Where she was going?" "No, sir. She simply thanked me and walked out to the street. I believe she used her phone to call a ride." Roman thanked him and ended the call, puzzlement deepening into concern. Their parting last night had been tender, with whispered promises to continue their conversation over breakfast. What had changed in those quiet hours before dawn? He returned to the bedroom, scrutinizing every corner for some clue to explain her abrupt departure. As he straightened the tangled sheets, something white fluttered to the floor. Roman bent to retrieve it, a delicate linen handkerchief, the corner embroidered with an elegant cursive Z in pale blue thread. His fingers traced the embroidery as something tightened in his chest. This small personal item seemed deliberately left behind, a breadcrumb or a memento, he couldn't be sure which. The gesture felt both intimate and cryptic, like Zara herself. Roman carried the handkerchief to his home office, where he settled at his desk and opened his laptop. If Zara thought she could disappear without a trace, she underestimated his resources and his determination. He typed Zara Ashford Clover Jean into the search bar. The results were surprisingly sparse for someone working at a prominent biotech firm. A professional profile showing her credentials, PhD in molecular biology from Stanford, 3 years, at Clover Jean, previously with a startup called Genetic Horizon that had folded 2 years ago. A few mentions in scientific publications, one photo from a conference where she stood in the background of a team presentation. Nothing personal, no social media presence, no public records beyond the basics. Roman leaned back in his chair, the handkerchief still clutched in his hand. In an age of digital footprints and constant connectivity, Zara Ashford had managed to maintain an unusually low profile. The scientist in him appreciated the puzzle. The man in him felt an unexpected ache at the emptiness of her departure. He reached for his phone and dialed his executive assistant. "Caroline, I need you to clear my morning meetings. Something's come up." After a pause, he added, "And I need you to find everything you can on a scientist named Zara Ashford, currently with Clover Jean. Background, contact information, current address, everything." "Of course, Mr. Bartlett," Caroline replied, her tone professional despite the unusual request. "May I ask if this is related to a potential acquisition?" Roman glanced at the handkerchief in his hand. "No," he said simply. "It's personal." After ending the call, Roman stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the San Francisco Bay glittering in the morning sun. Ships moved across the water like toys, the Golden Gate Bridge standing proud against the blue sky. Somewhere in this city, Zara was going about her day, perhaps already immersed in her research, perhaps already deciding their night together was a mistake to be forgotten. He couldn't explain, even to himself, why finding her again suddenly felt so imperative. One night shouldn't have this effect, especially on someone like him who had built walls around his personal life as carefully as he'd built his company. Yet something about Zara had breached those defenses effortlessly, leaving him feeling both vulnerable and more alive than he had in years. The handkerchief in his hand seemed to pulse with possibility. This wasn't over. Whatever had pulled Zara away from his bed before dawn, whatever had compelled her to leave without a word, he would discover it. Roman Bartlett didn't surrender easily, particularly not to mysteries that touched his heart. "I will find you, Zara Ashford," he murmured to the empty room. "And when I do, you'll explain why you disappeared." Little did Roman know that finding Zara would be only the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about science, ethics, and his own capacity for love and sacrifice. The handkerchief with its elegant Z was indeed a clue, but to a mystery far more complex than a woman who left before morning. Have you ever had someone walk out of your life unexpectedly, leaving you with nothing but questions and the memory of what might have been? Share your story in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this journey of discovery and connection, tap that like button now. Because as Roman is about to learn, sometimes the people who disappear from our lives leave the deepest marks on our hearts. 3 weeks after her night with Roman, Zara sat on the edge of her bathtub, staring at the plastic pregnancy test in her trembling hands. 2 pink lines stared back at her, bold and undeniable. She blinked hard, expecting the second line to fade or disappear entirely, but it remained stubbornly present. "That's not possible," she whispered to her empty bathroom. They had been careful, protected. This shouldn't be happening. Yet the evidence was literally in her hands. Zara placed the test on the counter and buried her face in her palms. Her mind raced through calculations and possibilities. One night with Roman, 3 weeks ago, the timing aligned, but the protection they'd used should have prevented this outcome. Something wasn't adding up. She reached for her phone and scheduled an appointment with her doctor for that afternoon, pulling strings as a medical professional to get squeezed in urgently. The hours crawled by as she attempted to focus on her research data at Clover Jean, her thoughts repeatedly drifting to the impossible test result hidden in her bathroom. That afternoon, Dr. Eliza Santos's face registered increasing bewilderment as she moved the ultrasound wand across Zara's abdomen. "This doesn't make sense," Dr. Santos murmured, her brow furrowed in concentration. "According to your dates, you should be only 3 weeks along, but I'm seeing—" She adjusted the equipment, peering more closely at the screen. "Zara, I need to ask you something unusual. Have you been taking fertility treatments?" Zara's heart pounded against her ribs. "No, absolutely not." "Why?" Dr. Santos turned the screen toward her. "Because I'm detecting multiple embryonic sacs. Not twins, not triplets." Her voice faltered. "I count 6 distinct implantations." The room seemed to tilt around Zara. "That's impossible," she whispered, echoing her words from that morning. 6? That can't happen naturally. Not from one encounter. It's extremely rare without fertility treatments," Dr. Santos agreed, her expression troubled. "I'd like to run some blood tests immediately. Check your hormone levels." This type of multiple pregnancy would typically only occur with significant hormonal intervention. As the doctor drew vials of blood from her arm, Zara's scientific mind began assembling puzzle pieces that had seemed disconnected until now. Carl's unusual interest in her menstrual cycle timing, the wellness supplements he had insisted all female researchers take, claiming they counteracted the effects of lab radiation. The late-night access she'd noticed to the reproductive biology lab, normally unrelated to their official research. Back at her apartment that evening, Zara paced the small living room, her thoughts churning. 6 embryos. The statistical impossibility of it hammered at her scientific sensibilities. Even with fertility treatments, sextuplets were extraordinarily rare. Without them, virtually unheard of. She pulled out her notebook and began documenting everything unusual she'd noticed at Clover Gene over the past few months. Carl's increased secrecy around certain lab sections, the restricted server files she'd accidentally glimpsed, labeled Project Phoenix, the blood draws that were supposedly routine but increased in frequency shortly before the gala. A cold realization crept over her. Had she been an unwitting test subject? Had Carl been experimenting with fertility enhancement without consent? The thought made her physically ill. Zara reached for her laptop and logged into the Clover Gene server remotely. Using her research credentials to access files she had permission to view, she searched systematically for anything related to reproductive enhancement, hyperfertility, or multiple gestations. 3 hours later, she found it, buried in a subfolder of research data she rarely accessed. A small study, unofficially documented, tracking elevated hormone levels in 4 female researchers. Her employee ID number appeared on one of the charts, with notations about optimal fertility window highlighted on the date of the charity gala. Her hands shook as she downloaded the files to a secure drive. This wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. Human experimentation without consent violated every research protocol and medical ethics standard. But why? What was Carl hoping to achieve? The answer came the next morning, when Zara slipped into the lab early before other researchers arrived. Using her access code, she entered Carl's private office and quickly searched his files. In a locked drawer, she found a worn notebook filled with handwritten observations, Carl's personal research journal. The entries detailed his obsession with creating optimized human embryos, genetically enhanced children with predetermined traits. He described a theory that certain male genetic profiles, when combined with hyperstimulated female fertility, could produce multiple embryos that would each express different optimized genetic combinations. One entry made Zara's blood freeze. Bartlett's genetic profile shows exceptional markers for intelligence and physical resilience. If paired with subject Zara's receptivity to the fertility protocol, offspring could demonstrate unprecedented genetic advantages. Carl had planned it all, the supplements that were actually fertility drugs, the gala, where he had introduced her to Roman, perhaps even orchestrating their meeting. She and Roman hadn't found each other by chance, they had been manipulated into a genetic experiment. Zara photographed the journal pages with trembling hands, then returned everything exactly as she'd found it. Back at her apartment, she struggled to breathe through waves of violation and betrayal. The children growing inside her were the result of manipulation, but they were still hers. Still innocent. She placed a protective hand over her still flat abdomen. These babies, however they came to be, deserved protection, especially from the man who viewed them as nothing more than scientific achievements. Roman's face flashed in her mind. Should she tell him? Would he believe such an outlandish story? And if he did, what then? As CEO of a major biotech firm, would he see the scientific potential of Carl's experiment rather than its ethical violation? No, she couldn't risk it. Roman was powerful, connected to the same scientific community as Carl. Until she understood exactly what had been done to her and what it meant for her babies, she couldn't trust anyone. Decision crystallized into action. Zara began systematically emptying her bank accounts, gathering essential documents, and researching remote locations. By nightfall, she had packed 2 suitcases with only necessities and booked a one-way ticket to Northern California under her mother's maiden name. As she looked around her apartment one last time, Zara felt a pang of regret for the connection she'd shared with Roman, a connection that now seemed tainted by Carl's manipulation. Yet beneath that regret lay fierce determination. She would protect these 6 lives growing inside her, whatever the cost. "I'm sorry, Roman," she whispered to the empty room, "but I can't risk them becoming science experiments." With that, Zara Ashford disappeared, taking with her the most extraordinary pregnancy the scientific world would never know about, and leaving behind a mystery that would haunt Roman Bartlett for months to come. 5 months had passed since Zara fled San Francisco. The small cabin she now called home sat nestled among towering pines in Mendocino County, 3 miles from the nearest neighbor and accessible only by a rutted dirt road that turned to mud when it rained. In early spring, wildflowers dotted the surrounding meadow with splashes of purple and gold, nature's contrast to the weathered grey timber of the cabin walls. Inside, what had once been a simple two-bedroom hunting retreat had transformed into an improvised nursery. The main living area now housed 6 handcrafted wooden cribs, arranged in a semicircle around the stone fireplace. Medical equipment purchased through cash transactions with rural suppliers cluttered one wall. Oxygen, tanks, heart monitors, and the specialized feeding equipment needed for premature sextuplets. Dawn broke over the eastern ridge as Zara gently transferred the last sleeping infant from her arms to his crib. Aidan, the smallest of her 6 miracles, had struggled with feeding issues since birth. His tiny chest rose and fell in the peaceful rhythm of sleep, his wispy dark hair, so like Roman's, curling against his forehead. Zara checked each of the other 5 babies in turn, Emma and Olivia, identical in their delicate features, Mason, with his perpetual curious expression. Lily, whose determined grip had been strong even in the womb, and Noah, the firstborn, whose calm watchfulness reminded her painfully of Roman. 6 babies, 6 heartbeats, 6 miracles she protected with every fiber of her being. The delivery had been difficult, an emergency C-section at 30 weeks performed by a retired obstetrician Zara had tracked down and paid handsomely for discretion. The first month had been touch and go, with Zara drawing on every bit of her medical knowledge to care for 6 premature infants without the benefit of a NICU. She had slept in 15-minute increments, constantly moving from one baby to another, checking oxygen levels, adjusting feeding tubes, monitoring heart rates. Now, at 3 months old, corrected age, they were finally stabilizing. The monitors beeped less frequently. The midnight terror of apnea episodes had become rare. The color in their cheeks grew stronger each day. Zara moved to the kitchen, assembling bottles with practiced efficiency. 6 bottles, each containing precisely measured formula, supplemented with nutrients specific to each baby's needs. The kettle whistled softly, and she silenced it quickly, unwilling to disturb the rare moment of quiet. As she prepared the day's first feeding, Zara glanced at the calendar pinned to the refrigerator. 6. Red X's marked off the days since her last supply run to the small town 30 miles away. She would need to go again soon. Diapers were running low, and the specialized formula wouldn't last the week. Each trip into town was an exercise in calculated risk. She used different stores each time, paid only in cash, and wore oversized sunglasses and hats to obscure her features. The cover story she'd crafted, a widow raising her sister's children after a tragic accident, generated sympathy, rather than suspicion from locals who kept their distance out of respect for her supposed grief. Zara carried the prepared bottles to the small desk in the corner, arranging them in the order of each baby's typical wake time. Beside the desk sat her emergency bag, packed with essential documents, medical supplies, and enough cash to disappear again if necessary. It never left her sight. The morning sun cast long shadows across the wooden floor as Zara settled into the rocking chair by the window. These precious moments of silence were rare. Soon the cabin would fill with the symphonic chaos of 6 hungry, demanding infants, each needing her complete attention. In these quiet interludes, Roman's face would inevitably find her. The memory of his smile as they danced in the hotel garden, the intensity in his eyes when he spoke about his work, the tender way he'd traced her cheekbone with his thumb just before kissing her beneath the stars. What would he think if he could see her now? Would he understand why she'd run? Or would he see only the scientific anomaly, as Carl surely would? 6 genetically modified children, each potentially carrying traits Carl had designed through his unauthorized experiment. Zara closed her eyes, fighting back tears. The weight of her secret pressed heavier each day. These children deserved their father, a man who, despite his one night in, her life, had shown her more genuine connection than anyone she'd known. But they also deserved safety, normalcy, protection from becoming lab specimens in Carl Braun's twisted vision of genetic advancement. A soft whimper from Noah's crib pulled her from her thoughts. Right on schedule, the eldest was waking. Zara moved to him, lifting his warm little body against her chest, as his whimpers subsided into contented coos. "Good morning, sweet boy," she whispered, brushing her lips against his downy head. As if responding to their brother's cue, Mason and Emma began stirring in their cribs. Within minutes, the peaceful cabin transformed into a bustling nursery, with Zara moving from baby to baby, changing diapers, administering medications, and beginning the morning feeding rotation. By mid-morning, all six were awake and fed, positioned strategically around the living room floor on colorful playmats. Zara kept the radio playing softly, not just for the baby's development, but to mask any household sounds from potential listeners outside. Paranoia had become her constant companion. She checked the security monitors mounted discreetly by the door, another precaution funded by the last of her savings. 4 cameras provided views of the approaching road, the surrounding forest edge, and the clearing behind the cabin. So far, they had captured only deer, foxes, and the occasional lost hiker quickly, redirected by the private property signs Zara had posted along the perimeter. As she folded a seemingly endless pile of tiny clothes, Zara's gaze drifted to the locked metal box beneath her bed. Inside lay the evidence of Carl's experiment, his journal entries, her medical, test results, and the files she'd downloaded from Clover Jean's server. If anything happened to her, the contents would be automatically sent to multiple news outlets and regulatory agencies. It was her insurance policy, her children's protection if she could no longer provide it herself. The thought sent a familiar chill through her. How long could she maintain this isolation? How long before Carl traced her location? Before Roman's resources found her? Before 6 growing children needed more than she alone could provide? Lily began fussing on her mat, tiny fists waving in frustration at a toy just beyond her reach. Zara knelt beside her, guiding the colorful rattle into her daughter's eager grasp. "That's it, sweet girl. You've almost got it," she encouraged, smiling as Lily's face lit with triumph. In these moments, watching her children discover the world, the weight of secrecy lifted briefly. They were thriving despite everything, growing stronger each day, developing distinct personalities that amazed her with their complexity. Emma's thoughtful gaze, Noah's patient observation, Mason's infectious giggle, Lily's determination, Olivia's expressive eyebrows, and Aidan's gentle spirit. 6 unique souls entrusted to her care. 6 reasons to keep running, keep hiding, keep fighting. As afternoon shadows lengthened across the cabin floor, Zara gathered her babies one by one for their evening routine. Bath time, fresh clothes, another round of medications and feedings. She sang softly as she worked, old lullabies her mother had once sung. To her, creating moments of normalcy in their extraordinary situation. Outside, the wind whispered through pine branches, carrying hints of approaching summer. Inside, Zara Ashford cradled her secret world in careful hands, never suspecting that in a San Francisco high rise, Roman Bartlett was finally picking up her trail, and their collision course was already set in motion. 4 months of searching had worn Roman Bartlett down to the bone. The man who stared back at him from his bathroom mirror each morning looked hollowed out, dark circles shadowing eyes that had once sparked with innovation and drive. His normally immaculate appearance had grown careless, 3-day stubble, rumpled shirts, hair that needed cutting weeks ago. "You look terrible," Caroline remarked one Monday morning, placing a stack of contracts on his desk alongside his 3rd espresso of the day. "The board is getting concerned." Roman waved away her comment. "The company's financials are stronger than ever." "It's not the company they're worried about," she replied, her voice softening. "It's you." He knew she was right. His obsession with finding Zara had consumed him, pulling his focus from Bartlett Innovations at a critical product launch phase. The search had begun methodically. Private investigators, discreet inquiries at Clover Jean, combing through public records. When conventional methods failed, Roman had deployed more resources, facial recognition searches through security camera databases, accessing cell phone records through connections in telecommunications, even tracking medical license registrations nationwide. Nothing. Zara Ashford had disappeared as completely as if she'd never existed. Clover Jean provided little help. Their HR department confirmed she had resigned abruptly, citing family emergency. Her apartment had been vacated, rent paid through the end of the lease, bank accounts emptied and closed, credit cards cancelled, phone service terminated. Roman's desk had become a war room dedicated to finding her. Maps, reports, photographs, and dead-end leads covered every surface. The handkerchief with the embroidered Z remained in his pocket at all times, a talisman of his determination. "The Zhang merger documents need your signature by noon," Caroline reminded him, gesturing to the contracts. Roman nodded absently, his attention already drifting to the 3 new search results that had appeared in his email overnight. More disappointment awaited, he was certain, but he couldn't stop himself from checking. The first 2 emails contained nothing useful: another Zara Ashford located in Australia, wrong age, and a distant cousin in Seattle who hadn't spoken to her in years. The third email made him freeze. Breaking: Ethics investigation launched into Clover Gene Laboratories, read the headline from a scientific journal's news alert. Roman clicked the link, his heart pounding as he scanned the article. The California Medical Ethics Board has opened a formal investigation into Clover Gene Laboratories following anonymous allegations of unauthorized human experimentation. Sources close to the investigation report concerns about genetic modification procedures conducted without proper consent protocols. Clover Gene's founder and CEO, Dr. Carl Braun, has denied all allegations. Roman's blood ran cold. Unauthorized experimentation. Carl Braun. The company where Zara had worked until her sudden disappearance. "Caroline," he called, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him, "cancel my meetings for the day. And get me everything you can find on this Clover Gene ethics investigation." Within hours, Roman's understanding of Zara's disappearance had shifted dramatically. Additional articles had emerged, each more disturbing than the last. A whistleblower had provided documents suggesting Clover Gene conducted secret fertility enhancement trials on unwitting female employees. The investigation had uncovered evidence of genetic manipulation designed to produce specific traits in resulting embryos. Roman's mind raced back to the charity gala. Carl Braun had been there, introducing himself briefly, even bringing Roman a drink at one point. Had he orchestrated the meeting between Roman and Zara? The thought made him physically ill. He needed more information, something concrete that might lead to Zara. Roman reached for his phone and dialed a number he rarely used. "Detective Williams," answered a gruff voice. "James, it's Roman Bartlett. I need a favor." The detective had been Roman's classmate at MIT before choosing law enforcement over technology. They had maintained a cautious friendship over the years, occasionally trading favors within ethical boundaries. "Must be important if you're calling my direct line," Williams observed. "It is," Roman confirmed. "I need access to the evidence files on the Clover Gene investigation." A long pause followed. "That's a federal case now, Roman. FBI territory." "I know someone's involved," Roman pressed. "Someone important to me who might be in danger." Another pause. "I can't give you files, but I might be able to tell you what to look for in public records." It wasn't much, but it was something. An hour later, armed with Williams' guidance, Roman was combing through property records, medical, license applications, and birth registrations in counties throughout Northern California. At 2:17 a.m., hunched over his laptop in his darkened office, Roman found it, a home purchase in Mendocino County, under the name Elizabeth Ashford, Zara's mother's maiden name according to the background check he'd run months ago. The timing matched Zara's disappearance perfectly. More surprising was the birth registration filed 3 months after the property. Purchase, 6 infants, all with the last name Ashford, no father listed. 6. The statistical impossibility of natural sextuplets without fertility treatment struck Roman immediately. 6 babies. Carl's experiments. Zara's disappearance. The pieces slammed together with such force that Roman physically recoiled from his desk. If his suspicions were correct, Zara had fled because she was pregnant, with his children, as a result of Carl Braun's unauthorized experimentation. Dawn found Roman packing a bag, his movements precise despite his exhaustion. The drive to Mendocino County would take hours, but he wouldn't trust this discovery to anyone else, not even his most loyal security team. If Karl Braun was monitoring for signs of Zara, any unusual activity might alert him. "I'll be unreachable for a few days," he informed Caroline when she arrived at the office. "Family emergency." She raised an eyebrow. Roman had no family as far as anyone knew, but nodded. "The Zhang merger? Tell them I'll sign when I return. It's a good deal. They'll wait." As he turned to leave, Caroline touched his arm lightly. "Roman, whatever you're doing, be careful." He managed a tight smile. "Always." The drive north gave Roman time to process the magnitude of what he'd discovered. If the birth registrations were accurate, he was the father of 6 infants created through some form of genetic manipulation. Children he hadn't known existed. Children Zara had been protecting by disappearing. The rolling hills of Northern California gave way to denser forests as Roman followed winding roads deeper into Mendocino County. His GPS directed him onto increasingly remote routes, finally indicating a narrow dirt road leading into thick woods. As the sun began its descent behind the trees, Roman spotted it, a small cabin, set back from the road, smoke curling from its chimney into the evening sky. A battered pickup truck sat in the cleared area beside it. Through the trees he glimpsed a figure moving on the porch, a woman with familiar chestnut hair, cradling something in her arms. Zara. Roman parked his car 100 yards from the cabin and cut the engine. His heart hammered against his ribs as the reality of the moment crashed over him. After months of searching, after countless dead ends and sleepless nights, he had found her. But what would he say? How could he explain that he knew about the children, their children, created through deception and manipulation? More importantly, how could he convince her that his intentions were pure, that he wanted only to protect her and the babies from Karl Braun's reach? Roman stepped out of his car, the forest floor cushioning his footsteps as he approached the cabin. As he drew closer, he could hear it, the unmistakable sounds of infants. Not one cry, but many, creating a chorus that tightened his chest with an emotion he couldn't name. 20 feet from the porch, a twig snapped beneath his foot. The sound cut through the evening quiet like a gunshot. On the porch, Zara froze. Slowly, she turned toward the sound, her body instinctively curving to shield the baby in her arms. When her eyes met his, Roman saw the progression of emotions across her. Face, shock, fear, confusion, and something deeper he couldn't identify. Roman? His name on her lips was barely a whisper, carried to him on the cooling evening air. 5 months of searching, of questions without answers, of longing for a woman he'd known. For just one night, all of it crystallized into this single moment of recognition. Roman took another step forward, then stopped, not wanting to frighten her. "Zara," he said simply, "I found you." Inside the cabin, another baby began to cry. Then another, the sound multiplying until it seemed to fill the forest around them. 6 distinct voices calling for their mother. 6 lives Roman had helped create without knowing. Zara's eyes never left his face as she processed his presence, calculating threats and possibilities. "How?" she asked, her voice stronger now, edged with protective ferocity. "I never stopped looking," Roman answered truthfully. "And now I know why you ran." Her expression hardened. "You know nothing." "I know about Karl," he countered gently. "About Clover Jean. About the experiments." He paused, his voice softening. "About our children." Zara's sharp intake of breath confirmed everything. She clutched the baby closer, backing toward the cabin door. "You need to leave. Now." "Zara, please," Roman implored, taking another cautious step forward. "I'm not here to take them from you. I'm here to help protect you, all of you, from Karl Braun." The mention of Karl's name made her pause, uncertainty flickering across her features. In that moment of hesitation, Roman saw his opportunity, perhaps his only chance to bridge the chasm between them. "I know you have no reason to trust me," he continued. "But whatever Karl did, whatever he's trying to achieve with his experiments, these are our children. Let me help you keep them safe." As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Roman and Zara stood frozen in. A tableau of uncertainty, a woman protecting her children from a world that would see them as scientific achievements rather than beloved babies, and a man discovering fatherhood in the most extraordinary circumstances imaginable. What happened next would determine not just their futures, but the futures of 6 innocent lives caught in a dangerous experiment. Have you ever faced a moment where trust seemed impossible but necessary, where protecting those you love meant taking an unimaginable risk? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're invested in discovering whether Roman and Zara can overcome their extraordinary circumstances to protect their children, hit subscribe now. The most heart-stopping part of their journey is just beginning. Twilight deepened around the cabin as Zara stood frozen on the porch, the baby in her arms beginning to fuss at her sudden tension. Roman remained at the edge of the clearing, hands slightly raised in a gesture of peace. The wind rustled through pine needles overhead, the only sound besides the escalating cries from inside the cabin. "You shouldn't have come here," Zara said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You need to leave, now." Roman took a cautious step forward, gravel crunching beneath his boots. "I can't do that, Zara. Not now that I know." The infant in her arms, Olivia, the most sensitive to her mother's emotions, began to wail in earnest. Inside, the other babies joined in a chorus of distress, sensing the disruption to their carefully ordered world. "They need me," Zara said, glancing anxiously toward the door. The protective instinct to return to her children warred with the necessity of keeping Roman at bay. "Let me help you," Roman offered, taking another step closer. The fading light caught the exhaustion etched into his features, the dark circles under his eyes, the new lines around his mouth. He looked like a man who had been searching for months, not someone who had come to claim a scientific discovery. Zara hesitated, her resolve wavering. "How did you find us?" "Property records, birth registrations. It wasn't easy. You covered your tracks well." His gaze drifted to the baby in her arms, his expression softening with wonder. "Is that—" "Olivia," Zara supplied reflexively, then immediately regretted giving him that piece of herself, of their family. Roman's breath caught audibly. "Olivia," he repeated, the name like a prayer on his lips. Another wail rose from inside the cabin, more insistent than the others. Zara recognized it immediately. Aiden, who needed his medication soon. She couldn't stand here indefinitely. Decisions had to be made. 5 minutes, she conceded finally. "You can come inside for 5 minutes, but then you leave and you never come back. You never tell anyone where we are." Roman nodded solemnly. "Agreed." Zara turned, adjusting Olivia against her shoulder as she pushed open the cabin door. The warmth and chaos of the interior engulfed them, 6 cribs arranged around a central play area, medical equipment organized on shelves, bottles lined up on the kitchen counter, a life constructed around the singular purpose of caring for these children. Roman paused at the threshold, visibly overwhelmed by the reality before him. 5 more babies, all with varying shades of dark hair, all with features that echoed his own alongside Zara's. "Their names?" he asked quietly, his gaze moving from crib to crib. Zara moved efficiently through the room, placing Olivia in her crib before, lifting a red-faced Aiden, who immediately calmed against her chest. "Aiden needs his medication," she explained, reaching for a small syringe on the counter. "The others are Noah, Emma, Mason, and Lily." She administered the medicine with practiced ease, then settled Aiden back in his crib. When she turned, she found Roman kneeling beside Noah's crib, his expression a mixture of awe and heartbreak. "He has my father's eyes," Roman observed softly. "Your 5 minutes are ticking away," Zara reminded him, though her tone had lost some of its edge. "Why are you here, Roman? Really?" Roman stood, his gaze never leaving the babies. "I told you, to help protect you. All of you." He turned to face her directly. "The investigation into Clover Jean has gone public. Carl Braun is under scrutiny, but he hasn't been arrested. If these children are what I think they are, he'll be looking for you." Zara's blood ran cold. "What do you think they are?" "The culmination of his unauthorized genetic modification experiments," Roman's voice remained gentle despite the harshness of his words. Babies created not just through fertility enhancement, but through genetic selection and manipulation. Am I wrong? Zara moved to a worn bookshelf and pulled down a leather-bound journal, her hands steady now with resolve. You should see this, she said, opening to pages marked with colored tabs. I took photographs of Carl's research notes before I left. He calls it Project Phoenix, the creation of genetically optimized humans through selective trait expression. She handed Roman the journal, watching his expression darken as he scanned the pages. He chose us deliberately, she continued. Your genetic profile matched specific criteria he was looking for. The supplements he gave me contained fertility drugs and genetic modifiers. He orchestrated our meeting at the gala, probably even ensured we were seated at adjacent tables. Roman looked up sharply. The drink he handed me that night likely contained compounds to enhance certain genetic expressions, Zara confirmed. In his notes he mentions male subject preparation without specifics. Roman closed the journal, disgust evident in his tightly controlled expression. And the result is 6 embryos, each developing with different combinations of selected genetic traits, Zara finished. According to his theory, multiple embryos allow for different expression patterns of the same genetic material. 6 different possibilities from the same parental DNA. Our children are experiments to him, Roman said, his voice hardening with anger. Yes. Zara glanced at the cribs, at the 6 innocent lives unaware of the circumstances of their creation. That's why I ran. When I discovered what he'd done, what I was carrying, I couldn't let him near them. I couldn't risk anyone seeing them as lab specimens rather than children, including me, Roman added quietly. It wasn't an accusation, merely an observation. Zara met his gaze directly. I didn't know if I could trust you. One night together doesn't tell you who someone truly is. And you're a scientist too, with billions invested in genetic research. How could I know you wouldn't see the same potential Carl does? Roman moved closer, slowly enough that she could step away if she chose. When she remained still, he gently took her hands in his. Because I'm also their father, he said simply. And whatever else I am, CEO, scientist, businessman, that comes first now. The sincerity in his voice broke something loose inside Zara, a wall she had carefully maintained for months. Tears she had refused to shed welled in her eyes. I've been so afraid, she whispered. Every day, watching for cars on the road, jumping at every sound, wondering when he'd find us. You don't have to do this alone anymore, Roman promised. My resources, my security team, my lawyers, all of it is at your disposal. We can protect them together. A small sound drew their attention to Emma's crib, where the baby had pulled, herself up to standing, her curious eyes fixed on the stranger in her home. Roman's breath caught as the infant tilted her head, studying him with a gaze so similar to her mother's. May I? He asked, gesturing toward Emma. After a moment's hesitation, Zara nodded. Roman approached the crib slowly, kneeling to eye level with his daughter. Hello, Emma, he said softly. I'm your father. Emma regarded him solemnly before offering a toothless smile that transformed her entire face. She reached one tiny hand toward him, fingers grasping at air. Tentatively, Roman extended his index finger. Emma grabbed it immediately, her grip surprisingly strong for one so small. The connection, simple yet profound, visibly moved him. When he looked back at Zara, his eyes shone with unshed tears. Thank you, he said hoarsely, for protecting them, for being strong enough to do this on your own. Zara felt the last of her resistance crumbling. The man before her wasn't the clinical scientist or ruthless CEO she had feared. He was a father meeting his children for the first time, overwhelmed by love for tiny beings he had only just discovered. Your 5 minutes are up, she said softly. Roman nodded, gently extracting his finger from Emma's grasp. I should go, or, Zara offered, surprising herself, you could stay. Help me with their evening feeding, learn their routines, and we could talk about what happens next. Hope bloomed across Roman's features. I'd like that very much. As night settled fully around the cabin, Roman and Zara moved among the cribs together, passing bottles and diapers, exchanging quiet observations about each baby's personality. With each small interaction, the gap between them narrowed. Strangers becoming partners in the most unexpected circumstances. Neither spoke of the dangers still lurking beyond their temporary sanctuary, of Carl Brown's continuing search, of the difficult decisions that lay ahead. For this one evening, they allowed themselves to simply be parents, discovering their children and each other in the warm light of the cabin. The truth about Carl's experiments had been revealed, but the greatest revelation was simpler and more profound. These 6 lives, however they came to be, were loved fiercely by both their mother and their father, and that love would become their strongest shield against whatever threatened their future. Morning light filtered through the cabin windows as Roman and Zara sat at the small kitchen table. Voices hushed to avoid waking the babies who had finally settled after their dawn feeding. Steam rose from their coffee mugs, curling in the cool air between them. A night spent caring for 6 infants had left them exhausted but oddly connected, partners in a dance neither had expected to perform. "They're extraordinary," Roman said, his eyes drifting to the row of cribs where their children slept. Each one so different already. Zara nodded, a small smile softening her features. "Noah is the serious one, always watching, taking everything in. Emma's the problem solver. Mason laughs more than the others. Lily never gives up when she wants something. Olivia feels everything so deeply. And Aiden—" Her voice grew tender. "Aiden fights the hardest, even though he's the smallest. Like their mother," Roman observed quietly. Their eyes met across the table, acknowledgement passing between them of all Zara had endured alone, the pregnancy, the birth, the months of isolation and fear. "We need to talk about what happens next," Roman said, placing his mug down with deliberate care. "Carl Braun isn't going to stop looking. The investigation has him cornered, and these children are his proof of concept, his scientific legacy. They're not lab specimens," Zara said fiercely. "They're our children." "Exactly." Roman reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "And I promise you, Zara, I will use every resource I have to keep them safe, to keep you safe, whatever it takes." The conviction in his voice resonated with a determination that matched her own. Zara turned her hand beneath his, their fingers interlacing naturally. "I believe you," she said simply. Those 3 words marked a turning point, the first fragile bridge of trust spanning the chasm between them. Roman's shoulders relaxed infinitesimally, as if he'd been holding his breath awaiting her judgment. "We have options," he continued. "I can have a security team here within hours. We could move you all to one of my properties. I have a place in Colorado that's completely off the grid. Or we could take more direct action." "Direct action?" Zara questioned. Roman's expression hardened. "Confront Carl with what we know. Use your evidence to ensure he faces consequences for what he's done." Zara withdrew her hand, rising to check on the babies. She adjusted Aiden's blanket before turning back to Roman. "It's not that simple. Carl has connections throughout the scientific community, financial backers with political influence. The journal entries are damning, but proving they're authentic would be challenging." "Then we gather more evidence," Roman said, joining her by the cribs. Together, he reached down to gently touch Noah's cheek, his calloused fingertip looking enormous against the infant's delicate skin. "I let you face this alone for too long. I won't make that mistake again." Zara studied him, the determination etched in his features, the protective stance he had unconsciously adopted between the cribs and the door. This man was not the distant billionaire CEO from magazine covers. He was a father awakening to the fierce protectiveness of parenthood. "Let me show you everything," she decided. From beneath a loose floorboard near the fireplace, Zara retrieved a metal lockbox. Her fingers trembled slightly as she entered the combination, revealing folders of documents meticulously organized and labeled. "This is everything I took from Clover Jean," she explained, spreading the contents across the kitchen table. Lab reports, genetic profiles, Carl's research notes, medication formulations. Roman examined the documents with a scientist's precision. his expression darkening as he grasped the full scope of Carl's experimentation. He modified the embryos post-conception, Roman noted, pointing to a particular chart, used CRISPR variants to activate specific genetic markers. The multiple embryos weren't just from fertility drugs. He intentionally created them to test different genetic expressions from the same parental DNA. Like running parallel experiments, Zara confirmed. 6 variations from the same genetic material. Our genetic material, Roman added quietly, harvested without consent. He continued reviewing the documents, his analytical mind cataloging details and connections. These metabolic markers, they're similar to research Bartlett Innovations abandoned 3 years ago. We found the genetic triggers promising but deemed human testing ethically unjustifiable. Carl had no such reservations, Zara said bitterly. Roman paused on a page of handwritten notes. He's tracking them, he realized aloud. These notations about subject acquisition, he's actively looking for the babies. Zara nodded grimly. I've intercepted 2 of his scouts already, men asking questions in nearby towns about a woman with multiple infants. I changed our appearance, our routines, but he's getting closer. Roman's jaw tightened as he reached a decision. We're not running anymore. We're ending this. He pulled out his phone, the first time Zara had seen him use it since his arrival. I need to make some calls. People I trust completely. Zara's wariness must have shown on her face, because Roman paused before dialing. Zara, I understand your caution, but we need allies, the right allies, to fight this battle effectively. After a moment's consideration, she nodded. Go ahead. Roman made 3 calls in rapid succession, first to his security chief, a former military intelligence officer named Sullivan, then to his company's lead counsel, Rebecca Chen, finally to Detective James Williams, his contact in law enforcement. Each conversation was brief, precise, revealing only essential information on an unsecured line. As he worked, Zara prepared bottles for the baby's next feeding. The familiar routine calmed her racing thoughts. Roman joined her, learning the careful measurements and temperature requirements for each infant's specialized formula. They'll need more regular medical care soon, Zara observed as they worked side by side. Proper vaccinations, developmental assessments, things I can't provide here. We'll arrange it, Roman promised. Safely. A soft cry from Lily's crib signaled the beginning of feeding time. Roman hesitated, then asked, May I help? Zara showed him how to support Lily's head, how to angle the bottle, how to burp her tiny form afterward. His large hands were surprisingly gentle, his focus absolute as he cradled his daughter. You're a natural, Zara commented, surprised by how easily he adapted to fatherhood. It feels right, Roman admitted. Like something clicked into place that I didn't know was missing. As morning gave way to afternoon, they established a new rhythm together, caring for the babies while formulating their strategy. Roman's allies would arrive by nightfall, bringing equipment to document and secure the evidence. Detective Williams had connections to the federal investigation already underway, channels through which Zara's proof could be properly protected and authenticated. Once we move, we'll need to act quickly, Roman explained as they prepared the cabin for their visitors. Carl will realize we're gathering forces against him. He'll be desperate. Desperate people are dangerous, Zara observed, checking the windows for the 10th time that hour. Roman crossed to her, placing steady hands on her shoulders. We're more dangerous, he said with quiet certainty. We're protecting our family. The word hung between them, family, encompassing a bond neither had anticipated that night at the gala. 6 children and a shared enemy had forged a connection deeper than their brief romantic encounter could have predicted. As sunset approached, Zara packed essential supplies for each baby, medications, special formulas, favorite blankets, monitoring equipment. Roman helped, learning each child's needs with the same focused attention he brought to billion-dollar acquisitions. Are you sure about this? Zara asked as they worked. Once we start this confrontation, there's no going back. Your name, your company, they'll be linked to this scandal. Roman paused, looking at her directly. Some things matter more than reputation or stock prices, Zara. These children, our children, deserve to live without fear, without looking over their shoulders for a scientist who sees them as experiments. He gestured to the cribs, where 6 extraordinary lives slept peacefully. I missed the first months of their lives. I won't miss any more, because we're hiding from a man who violated every ethical principle of our profession. His conviction settled something within Zara, a doubt she hadn't fully acknowledged even to herself. This man standing before her, this father to her children, would walk through fire to protect them. The truth of it was written in every line of his face, every careful movement as he checked each baby's supplies. "Okay," she said, resolution strengthening her voice. "We fight." As twilight deepened into night, headlights appeared on the distant road, moving steadily toward the cabin. Roman's reinforcements had arrived. Zara lifted Aiden from his crib, cradling him against her chest as she moved to stand beside Roman at the window. "No matter what happens next," Roman said softly, his arm coming around her shoulders, "we face it together." The headlights drew closer, illuminating the path ahead through the darkness. For the first time since discovering her pregnancy, Zara felt something beyond fear and determination. She felt hope, cautious but real, that her children might someday live in the light, free from shadows of the past. As Roman's team approached, Zara and Roman stood united at the threshold, no longer strangers, bound by one night, but partners forged in the crucible of parenthood and shared purpose. Together, they would confront the danger that had shaped their lives. For the sake of the 6 miracles sleeping peacefully behind them. Dawn broke over the California coastline as the convoy made its way south toward San Francisco. 3 identical black SUVs moved in tight formation, their windows tinted against prying eyes. In the middle vehicle, Zara sat surrounded by specialized infant carriers, each securely fastened to the custom-fitted interior. Roman occupied the seat beside her, his attention divided between the tablet, displaying their security perimeter and the sleeping faces of their children. "Status?" Roman asked into his earpiece. "All clear," came Sullivan's reply from the lead vehicle. "No tail detected. ETA, 90 minutes to the safe house." The safe house was actually a private residence in Pacific Heights that Roman had acquired through a shell company years ago. Unknown to the public and unlisted in any of his official holdings, it offered both security and the medical facilities the babies would need. Zara checked each infant methodically, adjusting Noah's oxygen monitor, and ensuring Aiden's medication pump was functioning properly. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, but Roman noticed the tension in her shoulders, the tightness around her eyes. "Second thoughts?" he asked quietly. Zara shook her head. "Not about confronting Carl. About returning to the city. Everything there reminds me of what he did, how easily he manipulated us." Roman's hand found hers between the carriers. "This time, we're not walking in blind. This time, we're prepared." The convoy wound through the hills of Marin County, the familiar skyline of San Francisco emerging through the morning fog. Zara's breath caught at the sight. 5 months ago, she had fled this city in terror, carrying 6 lives inside her. Now she was returning with those lives fully realized, 6 beating hearts depending on her courage. "We're being followed," Sullivan's voice reported suddenly. "Black sedan, half-mile back." Maintaining distance but matching all our turns, Roman's posture shifted instantly, his body angling protectively toward the children. "Countermeasures? Implementing now. Stand by." The SUVs executed a series of coordinated maneuvers, splitting briefly before reuniting on a different route. In the rearview mirror, Zara glimpsed the black sedan falling behind, losing them in the morning commuter traffic. "Contact dropped," Sullivan confirmed. "Proceeding to alternate location Alpha." Roman exchanged a meaningful look with Zara. "Carl knows we're coming. Somehow he knows." "He always was 3 steps ahead," Zara replied grimly. "That's what makes him dangerous." The convoy diverted to a private garage beneath an unassuming office building in the financial district. Sullivan's team moved with military precision, creating a secure perimeter as Zara and Roman transferred the babies from the vehicles to a service elevator. Within minutes, they were ascending to the building's top floor, a space owned by Bartlett Innovations, but used primarily for confidential meetings. Captain Elena Reyes was waiting when the elevator doors opened. The police captain stood ramrod straight in her pressed uniform, her expression serious but compassionate as she noted the 6 infant carriers. "Mr. Bartlett," she greeted Roman with a professional nod before turning to Zara. "Dr. Ashford, thank you for coming forward." Zara adjusted Lily's blanket before meeting the captain's gaze. "I should have done it sooner." "You were protecting your children," Reyes replied, her tone softening. "As a mother myself, I understand completely." The captain led them to a conference room that had been transformed into a temporary command center. Maps of the city covered one wall, surveillance photos of Carl Braun another. A digital evidence board displayed connections between Clover Gene's research facilities, financial backers, and known associates. "The FBI has been building a case against Braun for months," Reyes explained, gesturing to the evidence. "Unauthorized human trials, fraudulent research practices, illegal genetic modification, but they've lacked conclusive evidence linking him directly to the activities, which is where we come in," Roman concluded. "Exactly." Reyes turned to Zara. "Your documentation provides the missing link, proof that Braun personally conducted these experiments without consent, combined with DNA evidence from the children." "No," Zara interrupted firmly. "The children are not to be tested or examined. They're not evidence. They're human beings." Reyes raised her hands in a placating gesture. "I understand your concern, Dr. Ashford, but we need to establish paternity to prove your claim." "My paternity isn't in question," Roman stated. "I'm willing to provide DNA samples, but the children remain untouched." A tense silence filled the room, before Reyes nodded her acceptance. "Fair enough. We can make that work." Sullivan entered with a tablet displaying building schematics. "Security protocols are in place. Medical team is standing by on the residential floor." Roman nodded approval. "The children need to rest. They've had a long journey." "I'll go with them," Zara said, already moving toward the carriers. "Rebecca will accompany you," Roman added, gesturing to his legal counsel. "She'll document everything, who accesses the floor, what medical care is provided. Nothing happens without your approval." Zara appreciated his understanding of her caution, her need for control over their children's safety. As she prepared to leave with the medical team, Roman gently caught her elbow. "I'll join you soon," he promised quietly. "We just need to finalize the approach." Once Zara and the babies were safely escorted to the residential floor, Roman turned his full attention to Captain Reyes and the trap they were setting. "Carl's too smart for a direct confrontation," Roman observed, studying the surveillance photos. "He'll sense a trap, which is why we don't set it for him," Reyes replied. "We set it for his research." She pulled up a digital file, property records for a warehouse near the port of San Francisco. "Our intelligence suggests this is where Braun has relocated his private lab after the investigation began. He's been making regular visits, always at night, always alone." "What's he working on there?" Roman asked. "We believe it's the next phase of Project Phoenix," Reyes answered. "According to informants, he's been obsessed with locating the subjects since they disappeared. He needs to document their development to validate his research." Roman's jaw tightened. "He needs my children to prove his theories work." "Precisely. And that gives us leverage." Reyes outlined her plan, a controlled leak of information suggesting that Zara Ashford had returned to San Francisco for specialized medical treatment for the infants. Not their exact location, but enough to bait Carl into action. "He'll come for them," Roman concluded, "or at least try to gather information on their condition. And when he does, we'll be waiting." Reyes pointed to the warehouse schematics. "But first, we need legal authorization to access his current research, to prove continuity between what Dr. Ashford documented months ago and what he's doing now." Roman nodded, understanding. "A warrant. Based on Dr. Ashford's evidence and your testimony, Judge Williams has agreed to sign one." Reyes checked her watch. We move on the warehouse tonight, but Carl can't know we're coming. If he destroys his current research, we lose half our case. As they finalized the operational details, Roman found his thoughts drifting to the floor. Above, where Zara was undoubtedly watching over their children with fierce protectiveness. 5 months ago, they had been strangers whose lives intersected for a single night. Now they were united by 6 extraordinary lives and a common enemy. "Are you certain you want to be present for the warehouse raid?" Reyes asked, pulling Roman back to the present. "It could be dangerous." Roman's expression hardened with resolve. "I need to see it for myself, what he was planning for my children. I need to understand exactly what we're fighting." As night fell over San Francisco, the trap was set. In the darkness of the command center, Roman watched surveillance feeds flicker with shadows and movement. Somewhere in the city, Karl Braun was making his own plans, unaware that his carefully constructed scientific empire was hours away from collapse. The final confrontation was approaching, a battle not just for justice, but for the future of 6 innocent lives caught in the crossfire of ambition and ethics. Midnight cast the waterfront district in shadows, the warehouse silhouettes stark against the moonlit bay. Roman crouched behind a stack of shipping containers 50 yards from Karl, Braun's secret laboratory, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Captain Reyes and her tactical team were positioned strategically around the perimeter, waiting for the signal to execute the warrant. "All units in position," crackled Sullivan's voice through the secure comlink. No movement detected inside. Roman checked his watch. 2:17 a.m. The raid was scheduled for 2:30, giving the team time to ensure all escape routes were covered. He hadn't planned to be here personally, had promised Zara he would remain at the safe house with her and the children. But something had drawn him to this moment, this confrontation. Perhaps the need to face the man who had manipulated their lives so completely. "Movement at the east entrance," reported one of Reyes's officers suddenly. 2 subjects entering. One matches Braun's description. Roman tensed. Karl had arrived earlier than his usual pattern suggested. The operation timeline accelerated instantly. "All units prepare to move on my mark," Reyes commanded, her voice steady through the comlink. "Remember, we need the evidence intact." The warehouse stood silent and dark, its corrugated metal walls concealing whatever illicit research continued inside. Roman watched as tiny red laser dots appeared on the building's access points, the tactical team's targeting systems activating. "Execute," ordered Reyes. What happened next occurred with such explosive speed that Roman would later struggle to sequence the events properly. The tactical team breached 3 entrances simultaneously, flashbang grenades temporarily illuminating the night like lightning. Shouts of "Police!" echoed across the waterfront as officers stormed the building. Then, impossibly, gunfire erupted from inside. "Taking fire," shouted an officer through the comm. Multiple armed subjects inside. Roman's blood froze. Karl had been expecting them. Somehow he had known. Captain Reyes barked orders for reinforcements as the tactical team returned fire. Roman crouched lower behind the shipping container, his heart hammering. This wasn't supposed to happen. Karl was a scientist, not a paramilitary commander. His phone vibrated. Zara's name flashed on the screen, sending a jolt of fear through him. He answered immediately. "Roman." Zara's voice was tight with controlled panic. "There are men outside the building. Armed men. They're trying to access the security system." Horror washed over him as understanding dawned. The warehouse raid wasn't the real operation. It was a diversion. Karl's primary target had always been the children. "Lock down the floor," Roman ordered, already running toward his vehicle. "Sullivan has a security team with you." "I'm on my way." "Hurry," Zara whispered before the line went dead. Roman sprinted to his car, adrenaline flooding his system. "Captain Reyes," he shouted into his comlink. "It's a diversion. Karl's men are attacking the safe house." Reyes's curse was eloquent in its brevity. "I'm dispatching units to your location now." "How many attackers?" "Unknown," Roman replied, gunning the engine and peeling away from the waterfront. "But they're after the children." The drive from the port to Pacific Heights normally took 20 minutes. Roman made it in 8. running red lights and using side streets to avoid late-night traffic. His mind raced with calculations and contingencies. The safe house had state-of-the-art security, and Sullivan had stationed 6 former Special Forces operators to protect Zara and the babies. But if Carl was desperate enough to engage in open gunfire with police, what else might he attempt? Roman screeched to a halt 2 blocks from the safe house, immediately noticing the unmarked van parked at an odd angle near the service entrance. 3 men in tactical gear were attempting to override the building's security panel while a 4th stood watch, an assault rifle held at the ready. Taking cover behind a parked car, Roman assessed the situation. Sullivan's team would be defending the residential floor, but these attackers were clearly professionals. He needed to alert them to the exact entry point being targeted. He texted Sullivan a terse update, then observed as one of the men at the panel gave a thumbs up to the others. They had breached the outer security system. Roman couldn't wait for police backup. He reached into his glove compartment and removed the handgun Sullivan had insisted he carry, a weapon he had never expected to use. The weight of it felt foreign in his hand as he checked that it was loaded. The 4 men moved toward the service entrance, their movements coordinated and practiced. Roman circled around parked cars, using the shadows for cover as he approached from their blind side. He wasn't a soldier or a marksman, but he had the element of surprise. When he was 15 feet away, Roman stood and aimed the gun at the group. "Stop right there," he commanded, his voice carrying in the quiet street. The men whirled, weapons raising. Roman fired twice into the air, not aiming to hit, but to create noise and confusion. The sound echoed between buildings like thunder. The diversion worked. The attackers scattered for cover, momentarily disoriented. From within the building, Sullivan's security team responded immediately to the gunfire, lights flashing on as armed guards appeared at windows and doorways. "We've got hostiles at the service entrance," Roman heard Sullivan bark through his earpiece. 4 armed subjects. Mr. Bartlett is engaged with them outside. The next moments passed in a blur of movement and sound. 2 of Carl's men opened fire on the building while the other 2 turned their attention to Roman. Bullets struck the car he had ducked behind, shattering glass and puncturing metal. Roman moved low and fast, seeking better cover as the exchange of gunfire intensified. Sullivan's team returned fire from defensive positions, pinning down the attackers attempting to enter the building. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as reinforcements approached. Carl's men must have heard them too. Their tactics suddenly shifted from offensive to escape. They began retreating toward their van, providing covering fire for each other. Roman saw his opportunity. One man lagged behind the others, attempting to retrieve something from the ground, a dropped communication device. Roman lunged from his position, tackling the man with a force born of desperation and rage. They hit the pavement hard, the attacker's weapon skittering away across the asphalt. The man fought viciously, landing a crushing blow to Roman's ribs that knocked the wind from his lungs. Stars exploded across Roman's vision as he gasped for air, but he maintained his grip on his opponent's tactical vest. This man had come to take his children. Nothing else mattered. With a surge of adrenaline, Roman flipped the attacker over, pinning him to the ground. "Who sent you?" he demanded, punctuating the question with a sharp blow to the man's face. The attacker spat blood and laughed. "You're too late. Check your primary security, rich man." Cold dread washed over Roman as the implications registered. This attack was another diversion. The real threat was already inside. He struck the man hard enough to render him unconscious, then sprinted for the building's main entrance. Sullivan met him in the lobby, face grim. "We have a breach on the medical floor," Sullivan reported tersely. 2 subjects somehow accessed through the ventilation system. They've disabled the cameras. "Zara and the children?" Roman demanded, already moving toward the stairs, unwilling to risk an elevator. "Still secure in the panic room, but we can't establish communication. The system's been jammed." Roman took the stairs 3 at a time, his lungs burning, his ribs screaming in protest where the attacker had struck him. The medical floor was 3 levels up, an eternity away, while his family was in danger. He burst through the stairwell door onto the medical floor, Sullivan close behind. The hallway was eerily quiet, the usual electronic hum of medical equipment silenced. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim red glow, indicating that the main power had been cut. "The panic room is this way," Sullivan whispered, leading Roman down a corridor to the right. They moved silently, weapons ready, checking each doorway and intersection. The floor had been designed as a private medical facility with treatment, rooms and recovery suites surrounding a central nursing station. The panic room was located behind what appeared to be an ordinary supply closet, a reinforced safe space with its own oxygen, power, and communication systems. As they approached the nursing station, movement flashed in Roman's peripheral vision. He turned, just as a figure emerged from a darkened doorway, the barrel of a gun glinting in the emergency lights. "Down!" Sullivan shouted, shoving Roman aside as gunfire erupted. Sullivan returned fire, forcing the attacker back into the room. Across the station, a second armed man appeared, his weapon trained on them. "Carl wants the specimens alive," the man called out. "You two are expendable." The calculated coldness of the statement ignited something primal in Roman. These men saw his children as lab specimens, as research material to be collected. Rage, unlike anything he had ever experienced, flooded his system. Before Sullivan could stop him, Roman charged the second attacker. Moving so quickly, the man barely had time to adjust his aim. The gun discharged, the bullet grazing Roman's shoulder in a line of fire. Roman didn't slow, crashing into the attacker with the full force of his momentum. The impact sent both men slamming into a medical cart, instruments clattering to the floor around them. Roman felt no pain, no fear, only the absolute necessity of eliminating the threat to his family. He struck with precision born of desperation, targeting vulnerable points as Sullivan had taught him. The attacker crumpled, unconscious or worse. Roman didn't check. He was already moving toward the hidden panic room entrance, Sullivan providing cover against the remaining threat. The supply closet door was ajar, a terrible sign. Beyond it, the reinforced panic room door stood open, its electronic lock disabled. Roman rushed inside, heart pounding against his ribs. The room was empty. "No," Roman breathed, turning in a full circle as if Zara and the babies might materialize from the shadows. No, no, no. He spotted it then, a message scrawled hastily on the medical whiteboard in Zara's distinctive handwriting. "Roof." Hope surged through him. Zara hadn't been captured. She had escaped to higher ground. Roman and Sullivan raced back to the stairwell, climbing to the rooftop access. As they burst through the door onto the open roof, the scene before them froze them in place. Carl Braun stood near the helicopter pad, his thin frame silhouetted against the city lights. Beside him, two more armed men flanked Zara, who held Aiden protectively against her chest. Behind them, a black helicopter sat with rotors already spinning, its downdraft whipping Zara's hair around her face. The other 5 babies were nowhere in sight. "Roman Bartlett," Carl called over the noise of the helicopter. "How convenient that you could join us for this momentous occasion." "Let her go, Carl," Roman shouted, moving slowly forward, hands raised to show he was no longer armed. Sullivan remained by the door, his weapon lowered but ready. Carl smiled, the expression devoid of warmth. "You misunderstand the situation entirely. Dr. Ashford and these extraordinary infants are the culmination of my life's work. They're coming with me to complete the documentation. The only place you're going is prison," Roman replied, still advancing cautiously. "The warehouse raid recovered all your research. It's over." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Carl's features, quickly masked. A setback, nothing more. "The proof of concept is what matters." He gestured to Aiden. "These children represent the future of human genetic advancement. They're not research subjects," Zara said, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. "They're our children." Carl laughed dismissively. "Your maternal attachment is an interesting side effect, but ultimately irrelevant to the scientific achievement they represent." Roman was close enough now to see the desperation in Carl's eyes, the slight tremor in his hand as he gestured for his men to move Zara toward the helicopter. He was losing control of the situation and knew it. "Where are the other babies?" Roman demanded. "Safe," Zara answered before Carl could speak. "Hidden." Pride and love surged through Roman. Even captured, Zara had protected 5 of their children. Carl only had Aiden. Sirens wailed from the streets below as police reinforcements arrived. Spotlights suddenly illuminated the rooftop as a police helicopter appeared above. Its speaker blaring, "This is the San Francisco Police Department. Put down your weapons and surrender." Carl's face contorted with rage. "No," he shouted. "They're mine. My research, my achievement." He lunged toward Zara, reaching for Aiden. Roman reacted instantly, throwing himself between them. Carl's momentum carried them both to the ground. Aiden wailed in fear as Zara stumbled backward, away from the struggle. "Take him," Roman shouted to Zara, grappling with Carl on the rooftop surface. Carl fought with the strength of madness, his scientific facade shattered to reveal the obsession beneath. "You don't understand what you're destroying," he screamed, fingers clawing at Roman's face. "Those children could change humanity forever." Roman pinned Carl's arms, leaning close to his contorted face. "They already have," he said quietly. "They've made me a father." Police tactical officers swarmed the roof, subduing Carl's men. Captain Reyes herself placed handcuffs on Carl Braun, reciting his rights. As he continued to rant about scientific progress and short-sighted ethics, Roman limped to Zara's side, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. "The others?" he asked, gently touching Aiden's cheek to reassure himself the baby was unharmed. "In the MRI room," Zara replied, her composure finally cracking as tears filled her eyes. Inside the machine housing. It was the only place with enough metal shielding to block thermal imaging. Roman wrapped his arms around her and Aiden, his body trembling with relief and fading adrenaline. "It's over," he whispered against her hair. "He can't hurt them anymore." As dawn broke over San Francisco, Carl Braun was led away in custody, his grand scientific vision reduced to criminal charges that would keep him imprisoned for decades. The nightmare that had begun with one magical night at a charity gala was finally ending. Roman and Zara stood together as their 6 extraordinary children were, reunited, tiny hands reaching for their parents in complete trust, unaware of the battle that had been fought for their future. A future that would now be shaped by love, rather than laboratory protocols. The weeks following Carl Braun's arrest unfolded in a blur of medical examinations, police statements, and legal consultations. Roman converted the entire east wing of his Pacific Heights home into a specialized nursery, where the sextuplets could receive proper care while maintaining their privacy. A rotating team of pediatric specialists monitored their development, confirming what Zara had already observed. Despite their unusual conception, the babies were hitting normal developmental milestones, each in their own unique way. Zara's shoulder healed slowly from where one of Carl's men had grabbed her during the rooftop confrontation. Roman's injuries were more extensive: 3 cracked ribs, a sprained wrist, and the gash above his eye that would leave a small scar. But these physical wounds paled compared to the psychological aftermath of nearly losing their children. "I keep checking the security system," Zara admitted one evening as they sat on the nursery floor, watching Noah and Emma batting at colorful hanging toys. 4-5 times a night. "I can't help it." Roman nodded, understanding completely. "Sullivan says it's normal. Hypervigilance after trauma." He adjusted Lily's position in his lap, smiling as she gripped his finger with surprising strength. "I've been having the dreams too." The nightmares visited them both, vivid recreations of that night on the roof, but with endings, where they weren't fast enough, smart enough, strong enough to save their children. On the worst nights, they would meet in the kitchen at 3 a.m., making tea neither, would drink while taking comfort in simply not being alone with their fears. Assistant District Attorney Elena Morales became a regular visitor, preparing them for the legal battle ahead. Carl Braun had assembled an impressive legal team, backed by silent partners with deep pockets who had invested in his genetic research. "He's claiming scientific immunity," Morales explained during one briefing session in Roman's home office. arguing that his work falls under experimental medical research provisions. "There's nothing medical about what he did," Roman countered, anger evident in his clipped tone. "He manipulated human genetics without consent for his own glory." "We know that," Morales assured him. "But his defense is trying to frame this as a scientific breakthrough that justifies the means. They're citing historical research that was controversial at the time, but later saved lives." Zara, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. "He doesn't deny what he did to me, does he? The drugging, the manipulation, the unauthorized procedures." "No," Morales confirmed. "His position is that you were a compensated employee who benefited from cutting-edge fertility treatment. He claims the side effects were simply more successful than anticipated." Roman's hand found Zara's, squeezing gently. The legal maneuvering disgusted them both, but they remained united in their determination to see Carl face justice. The grand jury indictment came down 3 weeks later, 47 counts including unauthorized human experimentation, assault, fraud, practicing medicine without proper licensing, and kidnapping. Carl was denied bail, deemed a flight risk with international connections. While the legal process ground forward, a different challenge emerged. News of the miracle sextuplets and the biotech scandal behind their conception spread rapidly through medical circles before hitting mainstream media. Reporters camped outside Roman's building, hoping for a glimpse of the babies or a statement from their parents. "Genetic wonder babies, billionaire's secret family revealed," screamed one particularly sensationalist headline. "Biotech Frankenstein creates superchildren," claimed another. "They're treating our children like science fiction," Zara said, tossing aside a newspaper in disgust. "Not as 6 tiny humans who deserve privacy and dignity." Roman's public relations team advised a controlled narrative, a single interview with a respected journalist who would tell their story accurately while respecting boundaries around the children. After much discussion, Zara reluctantly agreed. The resulting article in The New Yorker presented a nuanced portrait of 2 parents protecting their unusual family from both a scientific megalomaniac and public curiosity. The journalist described the babies without exploiting them, focused on the ethical violations rather than sensationalizing the genetic aspects, and painted Carl Braun as what he truly was, a researcher whose ambition had overridden his humanity. Public sentiment shifted noticeably after the article. While curiosity about the sextuplets remained high, the tone changed from voyeuristic to supportive. Cards and letters arrived daily, many from parents of multiples offering advice and encouragement. "This one's nice," Zara said, reading from a handwritten note. "A mother of quadruplets in Minnesota. She sent homemade booties, 4 pink, 2 blue." Roman smiled, watching Aidan sleeping peacefully in his arms. The smallest of the 6 had grown stronger each day, his initial breathing difficulties gradually improving. "We should send her a thank you note." "Already drafted," Zara replied, setting the letter aside. "Though I told her we're only using their first initials in any correspondence." Their protective measures had become second nature, never posting photos online, using code names. With medical providers, maintaining multiple security systems monitored around the clock. The fear of Carl's wealthy backers attempting to continue his work remained a constant undercurrent in their lives. Summer faded into fall, and fall chilled into winter. The baby's first Christmas approached, a milestone neither Roman nor Zara had expected, to celebrate together when they'd met at that charity gala nearly a year before. "I never decorated for Christmas," Roman confessed as they assembled a noble fur in the main living room, carefully positioned away from curious hands and newly mobile babies. "Never saw the point when it was just me." Zara hung a delicate glass ornament on a high branch. "My decorations were always from the clearance section after the holidays. One string of lights that never quite worked right." They looked at each other, both recognizing how profoundly their lives had changed. From strangers sharing one night to partners creating traditions for their extraordinary family. The trial date was set for February, their testimony scheduled for the 3rd week. Neither looked forward to reliving the ordeal in a public courtroom, but both were determined to ensure Carl could never threaten another family. "Do you ever wonder," Zara asked one evening as they bathed the babies. In shifts, what would have happened if we'd just met normally? Without Carl's manipulation. Roman gently rinsed shampoo from Mason's dark curls, considering the question. I'd like to think we would have found each other anyway, that some connections are meant to happen, regardless of the circumstances. 6 babies might have been negotiable, Zara teased, wrapping Emma in a fluffy towel. Roman laughed, the sound still rare enough to make Zara smile in response. Maybe we would have started with 1 or 2 and worked our way up. She raised an eyebrow playfully. I'm not ruling anything out, he replied, his gaze warm as it held hers across the bathroom. The moment was interrupted by Lily splashing enthusiastically, soaking them both. Their laughter echoed off the tile walls as they continued the nightly ritual, a chaotic symphony of wet babies, towels, tiny pajamas, and bedtime stories. Later, with all 6 babies finally asleep in their cribs, Roman and Zara stood in the doorway of the nursery, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against him. I never expected any of this, Roman admitted quietly. After my mother died, I convinced myself that work was enough, that personal connections were unnecessary complications. And now, Zara prompted, looking up at him, now I understand what actually matters. His voice held certainty as he gazed at their sleeping children. Everything I built, everything I achieved, none of it compares to this, to them, to us. Zara reached up, gently tracing the scar above his eye, a permanent reminder of how fiercely he had fought for their family. Worth every battle scar? Every one, he confirmed, turning to kiss her palm. And I'd collect 1,000 more to keep you all safe. As they closed the nursery door quietly behind them, the security monitors glowed reassuringly in the corner. Outside, the city continued its nightly rhythm, unaware of the miracle unfolding. Within these walls, not just the 6 extraordinary lives growing, stronger each day, but the transformation of 2 people who had discovered that sometimes family forms in the most unexpected ways. And despite the challenges still ahead, the trial, the ongoing medical, monitoring, the ever-present security concerns Roman and Zara faced, the future together, their bond forged in fire and strengthened by the 6 heartbeats that gave purpose to their every decision. Have you ever faced circumstances that completely transformed your life's direction? Moments where sacrifice and love revealed what truly matters? Because as Roman and Zara discovered, sometimes life's greatest blessings arrive through its most unexpected challenges. Spring arrived in Northern California with a riot of wildflowers and the promise of new beginnings. 9 months after Carl Braun's arrest, Roman stood on the expansive lawn of Cypress Haven, the secluded estate he had purchased in Sonoma County. The property sprawled across 30 acres of rolling hills, vineyards, and old-growth trees, offering both natural beauty and the privacy their unusual family required. The main house, a modernized craftsman with natural stone and warm cedar, sat at the center of the property, surrounded by gardens and protected by state-of-the-art security systems disguised within the landscaping. A half-mile driveway with 3 separate checkpoints ensured no visitors arrived unannounced. Roman watched as the moving trucks departed, their job complete. The last 6 months in his Pacific Heights home had been necessary but temporary, a fortress rather than a home. This place, with its open spaces and country air, felt right for the next chapter. Is that the last of them? Zara asked, joining him on the lawn. She looked different today, more relaxed than he had seen her since they'd reunited. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her clothing casual, her shoulders no longer carrying the constant tension of recent months. All gone, Roman confirmed. The security team will finish the perimeter checks by evening. Zara nodded, her gaze sweeping across the property. It's beautiful here. The children will have space to grow, to run and explore. The thought of their 6 babies, now active 9-month-olds, running through these fields brought a smile to Roman's face. They had already begun showing distinct personalities that amazed him daily. Speaking of the children, Roman said, checking his watch, it's almost time for their afternoon meal. They walked together toward the house, shoulders occasionally brushing, in a comfortable familiarity that had developed between them. The past months had transformed them from reluctant CO parents thrown together by circumstance into partners who moved in synchronized rhythm, anticipating each other's needs in the complex dance of raising sextuplets. Inside the house, the newly assembled nursery buzzed with activity. Sullivan, who had resigned from his security position to become the family's head of household operations, was supervising as two nannies prepared bottles and baby food. "Everything on schedule, sir," Sullivan reported, his former military precision perfectly suited to managing the logistical challenges of 6 babies. Dr. Reeves called to confirm her visit tomorrow for their checkups. Roman nodded appreciation. Dr. Eliza Reeves, a pediatric specialist who had testified against Carl Braun at his trial, had become the children's primary physician. Her understanding of their unique genetic background made her invaluable, and her fierce protectiveness of their privacy had earned both Roman and Zara's trust. The nursery, or the command center as Sullivan called it, occupied the entire east wing of the first floor. 6 cribs arranged in a circle dominated the center of the room, surrounded by play areas, changing stations, and medical monitoring equipment that had become less necessary as the babies thrived. Noah, the firstborn, spotted Roman immediately and pulled himself up on the crib rails, bouncing with excitement. At 9 months, he was already showing signs of his father's analytical mind, observing everything with thoughtful attention before attempting new skills. "There's my boy," Roman said, lifting Noah from his crib. The weight of his son in his arms still amazed him, this small human, who shared his DNA, who looked to him for protection and guidance. For a man who had spent decades believing he needed no one, the fierce attachment he felt toward his children had been a revelation. Zara moved among the other cribs, greeting each child individually. "Hello, sweet girl," she cooed to Emma, who responded with her signature full-body wiggle of delight. "Have you been practicing your new sounds?" Emma immediately launched into a string of babbles, her expressive hands gesturing as if conducting an orchestra. Of all the babies, she was the most communicative, already attempting to mimic words and sounds. Mason, spotting Roman, let out his distinctive belly laugh, a sound so joyful it inevitably made everyone in the room smile. Unlike his more contemplative brother Noah, Mason approached life with unbridled enthusiasm, throwing himself into new experiences with fearless curiosity. "I think someone needs a diaper change before lunch," Zara observed, lifting Lily from her crib. The third-born daughter had her mother's determination and patience, often working tirelessly at new skills until she mastered them. Roman had initially approached fatherhood with academic precision, reading every book on child development and creating spreadsheets to track feeding schedules and growth measurements. But the babies had quickly taught him that parenthood couldn't be managed through data alone. It required presence, intuition, and a willingness to adapt to the constantly changing needs of 6 unique individuals. "Aiden's medicine is due with his next feeding," Roman reminded the nannies, checking the dosage chart posted near the medication cabinet. Though the smallest of the sextuplets, Aiden had made remarkable progress. His early breathing difficulties had resolved, but he still required immune support supplements that Dr. Reeves monitored closely. Already prepared, Mr. Bartlett confirmed Maria, the day nurse who had been with them since the babies were 4 months old. "And Miss Olivia has been asking for her favorite book all morning." "The one with the rabbits?" Roman asked, smiling as he thought of Olivia's fascination with the illustrations of woodland creatures. She would pat the pages gently, as if comforting the animals in the story. "The very one," Maria nodded. "She refuses all substitutes." Lunch proceeded with the organized chaos that characterized most activities with the sextuplets. Roman and Zara had developed a system, each taking 2 babies while the nannies handled the other 2, rotating to ensure every child received individual attention throughout the day. Roman settled into a chair with Noah and Aiden, balancing both babies as he alternated spoonfuls of pureed vegetables, watching his son's different reactions to the same food. Noah's thoughtful consideration versus Aiden's immediate enthusiasm never failed to fascinate him. "I spoke with Rebecca this morning," Zara mentioned as she wiped sweet potato from Emma's chin. "The final paperwork for the trust is ready for our signatures." The trust was Roman's creation, a legal structure ensuring each child would be financially secure regardless of what happened to their parents, while also protecting their privacy and medical autonomy. No one, not even future guardians, could authorize experimental procedures or research on the children without multiple layers of oversight. Good. Roman nodded. I want that completed before the media attention from the trial verdict resurfaces. Karl Braun's conviction had been front-page news 3 months earlier. 25 years without possibility of parole for his crimes. The scientific community had fractured in its response, with some colleagues denouncing his methods while others privately lamented the loss of his groundbreaking research. The publicity had eventually faded, but Roman remained vigilant about protecting their family from lingering interest. After lunch, while the nannies supervised nap time for 4 of the babies, Roman and Zara took Noah and Lily outside to enjoy the spring sunshine. They spread a blanket on the lawn, creating a safe space for the babies to practice their crawling skills in the fresh air. I think Noah's going to walk early, Zara observed, as their son pulled himself up using Roman's knee for support. He's got that determined look. Lily's not far behind, Roman replied, watching their daughter methodically stack the soft blocks he had placed before her. Though she seems more interested in building than moving right now. Zara leaned back on her elbows, face tilted toward the sun. Sometimes, I still can't believe this is our life, she admitted quietly. A year ago, I was alone in that cabin, terrified every time a car drove past. Roman reached over, his hand covering hers on the blanket. And now? She turned her palm up, intertwining their fingers. Now I'm still terrified sometimes, she said honestly, but not alone, never alone. The simple acknowledgement warmed something deep in Roman's chest. Their relationship had evolved gradually, cautiously, both of them prioritizing the children's needs above their own feelings. They had begun as CO parents united by crisis, become allies against a common enemy, and slowly, carefully, grown into something more complex and precious. They shared a home but maintained separate bedrooms, an arrangement that respected the newness of their relationship despite the unconventional circumstances that had brought them together. Roman had never pushed for more, understanding that Zara needed time to trust not just him, but her own feelings. Noah chose that moment to let go of Roman's knee, standing unassisted for 3 wobbling seconds, before plopping back onto the blanket with a surprised expression that made both parents laugh. Almost, buddy, Roman encouraged, clapping his hands. You're getting it. The sound of Sullivan calling from the house interrupted their family moment. Mr. Bartlett, the contractor for the therapy pool, is here for final measurements. The therapy pool was Roman's latest project, a climate-controlled indoor swimming facility where the babies could develop their motor skills through water therapy. Dr. Reeves had recommended it particularly for Aiden, but all 6 would benefit from the sensory experiences and physical development opportunities. I should handle this, Roman said, reluctantly releasing Zara's hand. The specifications need to be exact for the temperature regulation system. Go ahead, Zara smiled. We'll be fine here. As Roman walked toward the house, he glanced back at the tableau on the lawn. Zara, surrounded by sunshine, their children exploring the world under her watchful eye. The sight filled him with a contentment he had never imagined possible before that fateful night at the charity gala. Throughout the afternoon, the rhythms of their new home established themselves. The therapy pool contractor departed with detailed plans. The babies awoke from their naps at staggered intervals, each receiving individual attention before rejoining the group. The evening meal preparation began with military precision under Sullivan's direction. After dinner, bath time transformed the nursery bathroom into a splash zone. As 6 slippery babies were washed, dried and dressed in matching pajamas, Roman had initially approached this task with administrative efficiency, but had quickly discovered the joy in these intimate moments. The contagious baby giggles, the sweet scent of clean infant skin, the trust in their eyes as he cradled them in warm towels. I think Mason used more water for play than actually stayed in the tub, Roman commented, as he dried the squirming boy, who continued making motorboat sounds with his lips. Olivia's the opposite, Zara replied, gently working a tiny comb through Olivia's damp curls. She just floats peacefully and watches the bubbles. As darkness fell outside, the nighttime routine proceeded with practiced coordination. Bottles, bedtime stories, lullabies, and gentle rocking until heavy eyelids closed and small bodies relaxed into sleep. The process took nearly 2 hours from start to finish, even with help from the evening nannies. Finally, with all 6 babies sleeping soundly in their cribs, the monitors activated and the night nurse stationed at her desk, Roman and Zara retreated to the kitchen for their own delayed dinner. "I had Mrs. Jensen prepare something you could heat easily," Sullivan informed them, removing covered plates from the refrigerator. "She mentioned the lasagna is your favorite, Dr. Ashford." "Thank you, Sullivan," Zara said gratefully. "And please thank Mrs. Jensen as well." Once alone in the kitchen, Roman opened a bottle of wine while Zara heated their meal. The quiet domesticity of the moment felt precious after the constant activity of the day. "To our first night at Cypress Haven," Roman proposed, raising his glass once they were seated at the kitchen island. Zara clinked her glass against his. "May it be the first of many peaceful ones." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, both appreciating the simple pleasure of hot food and adult conversation. "I've been thinking," Roman said eventually, setting down his fork. "About us." Zara looked up, her expression open but guarded. "What about us? We've been focused on survival for so long, keeping the babies safe, dealing with Carl, establishing this secure home." Roman chose his words carefully, wanting to express his feelings without pressure. "But now that those immediate dangers have passed, I find myself thinking about what comes next. For you and me, and what are you thinking?" Zara asked softly. Roman met her gaze directly. "That I want more than co-parenting with you, Zara." That night at the gala wasn't just Carl's manipulation. There was something real between us. Something that's only grown stronger through everything we've faced together. Zara was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the stem of her wine glass. "I've thought about that too," she admitted finally. "About whether what I feel for you is just gratitude or dependency, or something deeper. And," Roman prompted gently, "and I think it's something deeper," she said, her voice gaining confidence. "When I imagine the future, not just the children's future but my own, you're always there. Not because you have to be, but because I want you to be." The simple honesty of her words touched Roman profoundly. In the business world, he was accustomed to complex negotiations and strategic positioning. But, with Zara, directness had always been their strength. "I want that too," he said, reaching for her hand across the table. "I want to build this family with you, not just as the mother of my children, but as my partner in every sense." Zara interlaced her fingers with his, a smile spreading across her face. "I'd like that." Later that night, after checking on the sleeping babies one last time, they stood in the hallway between their separate bedroom doors. The familiar moment of parting felt different tonight, charged with new possibility. "Would you like to come in?" Zara asked, her hand resting on her doorknob. "Just to talk a while longer?" Roman nodded, following her into the room they had designed together, but that he had never entered after dark. The space reflected Zara's essence: warm colors, scientific journals stacked neatly. On the nightstand, a photograph of all 6 babies framed beside the bed. They sat together on the edge of the mattress, the conversation flowing easily from practical matters of the household to deeper reflections on how far they had come. When Zara leaned in to kiss him, it felt both new and familiar, a homecoming rather than an exploration. "Stay," she whispered against his lips. Roman drew back slightly, searching her eyes. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," she confirmed. "We've created this family in the most unusual way imaginable. Maybe it's time we did something conventional and fell in love properly." "I think," Roman said, brushing a strand of hair from her face, "that I started falling the moment you challenged my view of the city lights on that balcony." As they settled into each other's arms, the baby monitor on the nightstand glowed softly, a reminder of the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together and the 6 miracles sleeping peacefully down the hall. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, developmental milestones to celebrate, medical checkups to manage, security protocols to maintain. But tonight, in the quiet of their new home, Roman and Zara began building the foundation of something just as important as the practical aspects of raising their children, a relationship chosen freely, grown through shared purpose and deepening affection. From the chaos of their beginnings, order had emerged. From danger had come safety. From strangers thrust together by manipulation had come a family bound by love. And as they drifted to sleep in each other's arms, both felt the certainty that, whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together. Not because circumstances demanded it, but because they had chosen each other again and again through the extraordinary journey that had brought them home. Fall-painted Cypress Haven in amber and gold as the Sextuplets celebrated their 15-month milestone. The crisp October air carried the scent of apple orchards from neighboring farms and fallen leaves, crunched beneath tiny feet as 6 determined toddlers explored their world with newfound mobility. Roman stood at the kitchen window, watching Zara guide Mason and Emma through the garden maze they had planted in the spring. Mason charged ahead fearlessly, his dark curls bouncing with each determined step, while Emma approached each turn methodically, patting the hedge before deciding which way to proceed. They couldn't be more different, Roman observed to Sullivan, who was preparing lunch with quiet efficiency. Miss Emma's already plotting her escape route, Sullivan replied with a rare smile. Master Mason just enjoys the journey. The past 6 months had transformed Cypress Haven from a refuge into a true home. Security remained vigilant but unobtrusive, allowing the family to establish routines centered around growth rather than fear. Weekly visits from Dr. Reeves confirmed what they observed daily. All 6 children were developing normally, their unique genetic makeup manifesting in accelerated cognitive abilities rather than physical differences. Through the window, Roman spotted Noah sitting cross-legged under an oak tree, intensely focused on a picture book in his lap. At 15 months he already recognized letters and simple words, pointing to objects and naming them with startling accuracy. His vocabulary expanded daily, each new word pronounced with careful deliberation. Inside the sunroom, Lily worked alongside her occupational therapist, stacking blocks with the concentration of an architect. Her fine motor skills had advanced beyond her age group, her small fingers capable of intricate movements that amazed the specialists who monitored the children's development. "Mr. Bartlett," called Olivia's nanny from the doorway. "She's asking for you." "Second time today." Roman nodded, still warmed by the knowledge that his reserved, thoughtful daughter sought him out specifically. He found Olivia in the music room, sitting at the child-sized piano they had installed last month. Her face brightened as he entered, small hands reaching upward. "Da-da, play," she requested, her voice soft but determined. Roman lifted her onto his lap at the full-sized grand piano beside her smaller instrument. His fingers moved across the keys, playing the gentle melody he had composed for her. Olivia watched, entranced, occasionally reaching to press a key that harmonized perfectly with his music. "She has perfect pitch," Zara said from the doorway, leaves clinging to her sweater from the garden maze. "Dr. Reeves says it's extremely rare at this age." Roman nodded, unsurprised by another remarkable development in their extraordinary children. "Where are the others?" "Mason and Emma are with Maria in the garden. Noah's still reading, and Lily just finished her therapy session." Zara came to sit beside them on the piano bench. "Aiden?" "Napping after his treatment," Roman replied. Though the smallest of the 6, Aiden had made tremendous progress. His immune system had strengthened considerably, allowing him to participate in most activities. With his siblings, though he still required supplemental therapy twice weekly, Olivia placed one small hand on her mother's cheek, the other on her father, bringing them closer together in a gesture that made both parents smile. Their daughter had become a tiny matchmaker, constantly creating moments of connection between them. "Smart girl," Zara murmured, leaning in to kiss Roman softly. Their relationship had deepened naturally over the months, growing from cautious affection to committed partnership. They shared not only parenting responsibilities, but genuine joy in each other's company. Roman had officially moved into Zara's room 3 months ago, though they maintained his former space as a private office where he could work remotely while remaining close to the family. Evening brought the controlled chaos of the family dinner routine. 6 high chairs arranged around the adults' table, 6 different reactions to the seasonal vegetable soup Mrs. Jensen had prepared. Noah methodically separated each ingredient before tasting. Lily insisted on holding her own spoon despite the mess. Mason devoured everything enthusiastically, while Emma inspected each bite. Aidan needed gentle encouragement, while Olivia waited to see her parents eat before trying her own portion. After baths and bedtime stories, with all 6 children finally asleep in their transitional toddler beds, Roman and Zara retreated to their favorite spot, the glass-enclosed porch overlooking the valley, where a small fireplace kept the October chill at bay. "I received an interesting call today," Zara mentioned, as they settled onto the cushioned swing. "Stanford's Genetic Research Department wants me to consult on their new ethics guidelines." Roman raised an eyebrow. "Are you considering it?" "I am," she admitted. "Working remotely, of course, but it feels right, using what happened to us to help prevent similar abuses." Roman nodded thoughtfully. "You'd be excellent at identifying the blind spots in their protocols." They sat in comfortable silence, watching moonlight illuminate the mist rising from the valley. Roman's arm wrapped around Zara's shoulders as she leaned against him, both reflecting on how far they had come from that night at the charity gala. "I found something strange today," Zara said suddenly, reaching into her pocket. "When I was organizing the children's health records," she handed him a small photograph, an ultrasound image from her pregnancy. Roman studied it carefully, noticing a small mark circled in red pen. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "This marking appeared on all 6 embryos during early development," Zara explained, her voice tight with concern. "I didn't think much of it then, but I found Carl's notes about it in some of the files the FBI returned." Roman leaned closer, examining the unusual pattern that resembled a DNA helix with modified ends. "What does it mean?" "According to Carl's coded research, it's a genetic marker he engineered. A signature." Zara took a deep breath. "He called it the Phoenix Protocol, and claimed it would activate certain genetic expressions when the children reach puberty." The peaceful evening shattered as implications washed over them. Their children carried something within them, something engineered, something waiting. Could it be removed, modified? Roman asked. Scientist and father warring within him. "I don't know," Zara whispered. "But we need to find out." As moonlight bathed Cypress Haven in silver, 6 children slept peacefully, unaware of the mystery encoded in their very cells. A final challenge from a man who viewed them as his greatest creation, rather than the beloved children they had become. 1 year later, autumn again transformed Cypress Haven into a canvas of gold and crimson. On the sprawling lawn, 6 two-year-olds chased fallen leaves, their laughter carrying across the valley like music. Roman and Zara watched from the porch swing, fingers intertwined, matching gold bands gleaming in the afternoon light. The mysterious genetic marker remained part of their children's story, neither fully understood nor forgotten. Working together with trusted researchers, they had made progress in mapping its potential, implications, transforming Carl's threat into a challenge they faced as a family, though their conception carried the shadow of Carl Braun's interference. Zara and Roman found peace in knowing their sextuplets were thriving. Regular checkups with Dr. Reeves confirmed what their parents already sensed each day. The children were healthy, strong, and meeting milestones with only minor challenges that attentive care could manage. Yes, they carried a unique genetic marker from Carl's tampering, but it manifested not as weakness, only as subtle gifts, sharper memory, quick learning, resilient immune systems. Importantly, there were no hidden conditions or looming illnesses. They were, above all else, children, laughing, crying, growing, and loved. For Zara, it was the greatest relief. Her 6 miracles were not experiments, not projects, but vibrant, healthy lives. And for Roman, it was the reminder that whatever science had tried to interfere with love and protection had already rewritten their future. "They're thriving," Zara observed, watching Noah help Aidan climb onto a pile of leaves. Roman nodded, his eyes reflecting contentment and resolve. "Because of the choices we made." because we chose love over fear. Their journey from strangers to soulmates, from victims to victors, reminded them daily that family isn't defined by perfect circumstances, but by perfect commitment, the willingness to fight for those we love against any odds. Some stories stay with us long after they're told. If